Chapter 1158, Fusing Three Heaven Flames. Chapter 1158, Fusing Three Heaven Flames. All the vegetation in the valley withered and died. A sturdy body sat still, his eyes closed. A beautiful flame floated in front of his glabella, which had different colors including scarlet, shining silver, dark green, and ice blue. It looked so magnificent. A peculiar flower that had a face of a pretty woman was covered by that flame. The crystal shrouding the flower was slowly melted down, revealing its astonishing glamour. However, that beauty was wincing in pain, and it looked so real, as if it was a real pretty lady. The flower was fiercely burned, and it melted down into a transparent liquid that was then evaporated by the flame. However, it didn't become steam but turned into some fine, long, fluid-like threads that looked like saliva. As the flame was illuminating it, it had many different hues. A mysterious but deep feeling churned in Shi Yang's heart. His co-soul seemed to be divided into different sections by those fine threads. Many years ago, he had used the Heaven Flame Refining Divine Technique to create the co-soul from the origin and the 10 heaven flames with his soul seal. At that time, he thought he had completed the soul fusion and that the 10 heaven flames were integrated completely into one entity. However, he recognized afterward that the Heaven Flame Refining Divine Technique had just helped him create the co-soul. The distinctive auras of the 10 different heaven flames had still existed in his co-soul. They hadn't wholly fused with each other yet. In the fountainhead of Powers Upanishads, Yu Shan and Xian Fei had explained to him and made him realize it wasn't simple to fuse the heaven flames. In the same area, he had tried to fuse the heaven flames with similar characteristics: the Purgatory True Flame, the Earth Flame, and the Vermilion Bird True Flame. They had become a brand new source of flaming energy, seizing a particular spot in his co-soul. Today, with the power of the 7-colored spirit flower, the auras of the 8 types of heaven flames in his co-soul became distinguishing. Eventually, the 7-colored spirit flower was melted utterly into a viscous, transparent liquid. Each drop of this fluid could be stretched and elongated like soul threads, filling his co-soul and contacting each of the heaven flames. It gave them a bridge to connect with each other. The 7-colored spirit flower fluid had a magical effect. It could guide the auras of the heaven flames that were easy to gather. The yin spirit ghost flame, the immemorial demonic flame, and the corpse vanishing flame were different, but they seemed to have a subtle connection. Under the guidance of the transparent soul threads, they flew up, drifting and dancing in his co-soul. His co-soul was now a crystal skull made of brilliant flames. He could see the different colored flames taking different areas in the skull. Some fine threads like soul fibers scattered around the skull like a net. He then saw 3 flames in green, blue, and ash-gray colors from the 3 points of a triangle flying towards the center. That center was the glabella of the transparent skull, where a fierce soul energy fluctuation was emitted. The green color flame was the corpse vanishing flame, the blue one was the yin spirit ghost flame, and the ash-gray one was the immemorial demonic flame. The 3 different colored flames slowly moved. Eventually, they congregated in the center of the skull, right beneath the glabella. The tearing brain pain swarmed over Shi Yang's soul. Not only was his co-soul flickering rapidly, his host soul, the soul altar, and even his god body felt like thousands of sharp razors were cutting through. This terrible pain made Shi Yang scream and screech in this valley where no one could see him. His shrieks and howls were like those of a wild beast, and his screams reverberated and traveled far away. It would have made the hair on people's napes rise if they heard him. While he was screeching, the 3 flames in green, blue, and ash-gray were turbulent like boiling water. They twisted with each other like 3 ribbons that were inseparable. Slowly, they became one. In a desolate valley in the center of the ancient continent, Shi Yang was enduring the pain of heart-cutting to fuse his heaven flames. By a pond not really far from him stood a silent, beautiful figure. She was frowning and looking at the pond. The pond was so bright and clear that she could see her own reflection like a mirror. Gradually, some marvelous illusion appeared. A little girl with a braided ponytail was crouching and hugging her knees in a dark, heavy abyss. She covered her face and sobbed in a muffled voice. Her shoulder shivered as she was so scared and aggrieved. The evil ghosts and spirits were wandering around her petite body, howling and wailing. Their terrifying voice rolled and created waves that naked eyes could see attacking the little girl. The girl quivered in fear and shouted as if she was cracked crazy. Her ear-piercing scream crashed countless ghosts into pieces like a sharp sword. The illusion disappeared. A new one took place. The little girl was now a teenager around 12 or 13 years old. She was confined in a secret domain of fiery flames and bitter ice. She was using her soft body to resist. Her skin cracked not long after that. Different illusions changed like a nightmare that was eroding people's hearts. Eventually, the pond stopped at the image of the adult version of that little girl. A cold and proud woman. That was Princess Audrey of the Imperial Dark Clan. This pond was like a mirror that had reflected her entire life. The corner of her cold mouth twitched. The image in the pond suddenly drifted apart and disappeared like a reflection in a shattered mirror. The pond resumed its calmness. Nothing strange happened afterward. She couldn't help but snort and glide like a ghost over the pond. As she was heading to the majestic holy mountain, she suddenly heard some wild beast screaming like the thunderclap coming from afar. It was loud enough to make her soul alter tremble. Squinting, she hesitated for a while. She gave up the thought of heading to the mountain and made a turn. After a long time, she appeared lonely in a valley where flowers and trees were all withered. At first glance, she saw a man screaming and rolling on the ground in pain. He seemed to not be able to withstand the pain. Audrey changed her visage a little bit. Seeing the brilliant flame bobbing, she sensed and understood what was going on here immediately. Watching him with a cold face for a while, Audrey suddenly sat down by him and said nothing. She closed her eyes and began to cultivate as if she wanted to train her spirit in the waves of grunting and screeching. Shiyang was making loud commotions that it attracted more people. Sounds of breaking tree branches arose from a far distance. After a while, 4 shadows slowly emerged. They were Phelps and 3 warriors of his family. From several thousand meters away, Phelps's sinister eyes gazed at Shiyang. He licked his lips and showed his bloodthirsty intention. He quietly waved his hand. 4 shadows quietly approached Shiyang. The energy in their god bodies was urged, surging powerfully. Suddenly, Phelps's visage froze as he saw a beautiful figure sitting quietly behind Shiyang. That woman was looked at him with her cold and sharp saber-like eyes. Phelps suddenly felt chilled. As soon as he saw the woman, he retreated without leaving a word. He was scared that both his soul and body would perish. The woman didn't chase after him. She stood still like a rigid ice sculpture with a chilling aura. Time flew fast. Gradually, Shiyang in front of her stopped screaming. He got up and drew earth and heaven energy to clean his vessels. The Kosol didn't move fiercely anymore. The 3 different flames had fused into one. All of a sudden, Audrey said in her usual cold voice, "You're all right now, I suppose." Shiyang sat facing her and furrowed his brows slightly. "Why did you help me by protecting me here?" When Phelps's group of 4 came, he was in a critical moment. If they attacked him, his soul would have vanished and his body would have burned into ashes right away. When Audrey arrived, he felt incredibly insecure. He thought that Audrey would attack him. However, she had just sat down by him. Everything was so calm that it was out of his expectation. In the critical moment, she had helped him shoo away Phelps's team. "You're too careless." Audrey was still cold and arrogant. Fusing the heaven flames of the origin is the most painful practice. You need to bear the pain of your soul burning. It's the most terrible torment in this world. When you want to fuse your heaven flames, you should choose the safest area and you must have someone protecting you. Since you're so reckless, it's a miracle that you lived until now. As Audrey also had the origin, she had to experience the fusion of heaven flames too. She knew how terrible this kind of pain was more than anyone else. "I don't know why you protected me," repeated Shiyang, his face dark. "I fought against Haig." Audrey looked at him coldly. She pondered and then said seriously, "I can't kill him alone. In this center, only you can help me kill him. Only the warrior who has fused with the origin can join hands with me to finish him. I need your power. That's all." Audrey told him the reason. Shiyang grinned strangely. He knew that Audrey wasn't precise because there was someone like that in this area. It was Kang Yun. However, as Kang Yun was from the heavenly monster tribe, he was destined to not stand under the same sky with her. Thanks for protecting me. Shi Yang stood up and stretched his body. He retrieved the flame in front of his glabella. Don't worry. The God Clan is our common enemy. If we meet Haig, I'm sure I won't show mercy. You've battled against Harson. What do you think about him? Asked Audrey all of a sudden. Shi Yang's face became solemn. He took a deep breath and then said, Harson is really strong. I haven't fought Haig, but I believe that Harson could compare to Haig. Harson can burn his flesh and blood to get energy. His soul power Upanishad is extreme too. He's adamant to deal with. It seems like we don't have a positive situation. Audrey's bright eyes looked heavy. I think what we should do now is to find and gather our people. That's how we can have the competence to fight the God Clan. Shi Yang looked at the holy mountain in the distance. Too bad that my soul consciousness is bound in this place. It's not easy to gather them once again. How about you? Do you have any solution? Audrey shook her head begrudgingly. What do you think we should do? Asked Shi Yang. Move forward and head to that big mountain. Along the way, we should gather our people and try to kill more members of the God Clan, suggested Audrey. Okay. Chapter 1159, Refine the Ancient Continent. Chapter 1159, Refine the Ancient Continent. Shi Yang and Audrey understood clearly that only when they gathered, they could strike the God Clan with their best attacks that would also keep them safe. The powerful vortex would send each of the warriors who had entered the center to a different area. Groups of warriors scattered and stayed in the areas by the edge of the center where death traps and restrictions attacked them. All had to struggle to survive. If Shi Yang and Audrey could meet up shortly after, it was their big luck. Since they were both super powerful, when they accompanied each other, they would surely have the capacity to defend themselves unless they had to face Haig, Harson, and MIA at the same time. While walking with Audrey to the majestic holy mountain, Shi Yang kept silent and used his soul consciousness to check his co-soul. In this moment, his co-soul had 6 different auras of heaven flame, including the primal chaos sacred flame, world extinguishing thunder flame, 9 serenity soul devouring flame, ice cold flame, and the 2 combined forms of the purgatory true flame, vermilion bird true flame, earth flame, and the immemorial demonic flame, yin spirit ghost flame, and the corpse vanishing flame. The 3 heaven flames, immemorial demonic flame, yin spirit ghost flame, and the corpse vanishing flame that had just fused with each other and created a blue-green restlessly flickering flame, had the blended aura of demon chi, yin chi, and monster chi. The energy fluctuation of this flame was sinister and peculiar. The 6 heaven flames with different auras flew in his co-soul like 6 different brains. They all released terrifying energy fluctuations. The 6 flaming light shapes floated and continued to generate energy, which accelerated his co-soul in connecting to the energy remnant of earth and heaven. He could feel it at any minute. His co-soul was taking in the free energy and pouring it into his ethereal extent. He could feel that his ethereal extent changing every day. After the second fusion of the flaming co-soul, Shi Yang had a feeling that his co-soul had gradually become independent. It seemed like his co-soul didn't need his host soul to exist, and eventually, it could become a real-life form. The co-soul was the combination of the heaven flames and Grace Mainland's origin. It seemed to have a magical connection with Grace Mainland. Every time his heaven flames fused, he had a stronger feeling that he could use the co-soul to connect with Grace Mainland and make it change somehow. Grace Mainland was like the god body of his co-soul. The changes of Grace Mainland would also change his co-soul and make it evolve. It was a unique coexistent relationship in which both sides would grow or decline together. It was so marvelous that it couldn't be described clearly with words. If the ethereal extent was a world that was created by the soul altar, his host soul could control that world. With the same principle, Grace Mainland would become a world that his co-soul could control, which was a real world that existed and was one of the most magical ancient continents in this cosmos. As his flaming origin could be fused to the utmost degree, Shi Yang's co-soul seemed to have some transformation to grow further to the point where it would become the sole god of Grace Mainland who could adjust all changes of the whole continent. Nothing could compare to this mysterious, fantasy understanding. It was a marvelous miracle that couldn't be described. If you could fuse all the heaven flames of the origin, the ancient continent, will become your incipient extent. Audrey suddenly turned to look at him and spoke to him after a long time of remaining silent. Refining the ancient continent to be the life incipient extent is the ultimate dream of countless creatures from different clans. You're really lucky that you've made another step on this long, thorny journey. Refining the ancient continent to the life incipient extent. Shi Yang felt shaken, his face shocked. Audrey had frightened him. In this minute, he understood how lucky he was. He finally knew to which tremendous degree he could reach after he had completely fused his flaming origin. In the primal time of this universe, the 5 ancient continents had given birth to the great 4 creatures who had taken turns to be the overlords of the cosmos and the races of this entire world. The ancient continents were always the most mysterious and marvelous places in this vast sea of stars. When a warrior refined the ancient continent to be his incipient extent, he could understand the deepest secret of the ancient continent and the mysteries of the dawn of this universe. He would be able to understand the essence of the births of the great 4 creatures. To anybody, it was an enticement that they could never resist. No one could stay cool and calm in front of this temptation. Audrey's indifferent voice had given Shi Yang direction quickly. He suddenly felt a sublimation where he was changed mentally and physically. It felt like someone had cleared the mist covering his soul. The world was now so clear and vivid to him. You didn't know the mysterious features of refining the flaming origin, did you? Audrey's body slightly quivered. She looked at him disbelievingly. You knew nothing about it. His sublimation of clearing the mist to see the rainbow on Shi Yang's face was busted as she said so. It surprised Audrey a lot. She now looked at him as if she was watching a monster. As you knew nothing, why did you come here? Shi Yang's face twitched as he was embarrassed. He wore a stiff look and gave her nothing but a snort. It was the first time that Audrey didn't know whether she should cry or smile. She looked at him with the odd look that she used for a fool. However, she didn't mock or provoke him and just gave him a curt nod. It's okay. Perhaps the one who sent you here has some other arrangement. That person wouldn't be so rash. Shi Yang was moved. He instinctively looked at the blood vein ring and frowned. According to Kang Yun, the blood vein ring was the key. If the ring spirit woke up, he wouldn't be so passive. He would have known what he should seek and harvest in this ancient continent. Anyway, it didn't seem like the ring spirit was about to wake up. Can you use the sound stone to contact the others? Asked Shi Yang all of a sudden. Can't, Audrey shook her head. This area has some restrictions. Even our soul consciousnesses are covered with a foggy curtain. It's really hard to contact each other. But this thing seems to be able to do that. Shi Yang took out a bloody bone that came from the Charteris family. It was Shen Shan's bones. He waved the bloody bone for a while and said, each bone has an evil formation carved on it, which can magically contact each other. Stroking the bone, death energy from his fingers seeped into the bone. He sensed carefully and then said, there are 2 Charteris warriors not far from us. If you can sense the blood bones, Harson can find you with the same methods, right? Asked Audrey. Shi Yang nodded. It works like that. So in a specific distance, you could sense the location of another bloody bone? Audrey asked again. True. Not bad. Even if the 2 you've just sensed included Harson, when you and I join hands, we could suppress and kill them. Yep, it's true. They exchanged looks. Shi Yang suddenly dashed away and flew in the direction he had just sensed. Audrey didn't say a word. She followed him tacitly. They were about to launch the first attack on the God Clan's warriors. Dash! In the boiling lava pond, Sho Jiao, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan looked like they had just shed their skin. Their god bodies were now terrifyingly red like boiling water. They had almost drained their body to crawl out of the lava pond. They now lay on the ground, facing the sky and feeling so exhausted. The scorching lava in the pond was more terrible than the hottest boiling oil. Although they were at 3rd sky of ethereal god realm and they had gathered the god power to create a layer of energy to protect their bodies, they couldn't entirely avoid the attack of heat. They felt like they were roasted. They had consumed a significant amount of god power. By the mouth of the volcano stood many red ancient trees that jutted into the clouds. 2 men were hiding inside the thick branches of the tree, looking at the other 3 with bloodthirsty eyes. Their eyes drilled at Shojiao's team. They were 2 Charteris warriors, Hassan's mad henchmen. They had gotten rid of a death trap and hidden on that tree to recover. All of a sudden, they found 3 exhausted warriors getting out of the volcano. They looked feeble, as if they had no drop of energy remaining. The 2 exchanged looks. They all saw the cruel smile on each other's faces. They didn't say a word when thrusting their hands into their abdomen to take out the blood-dripping bones. The brutal, wild smell of blood diffused from them, which was terrifyingly thick and gave people a heavy pressure that they couldn't even get themselves all together. Shojiao, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai didn't want to move at all. However, they suddenly smelled danger. They felt chilled and their hair raised. They were all startled, jolting up and rolling one round to get up. They looked at the 2 Charteris warriors wearing crazy faces and, coming with their bloody bones. The 3 of them were so frightened and insecure. They hastened to urge the little amount of God power in their bodies. They glanced at each other with fear, sighing desperately. They knew that it would be a fatal consequence this time. All of a sudden, the stars in the sky above their heads seemed to come to life. Starlight fell rapidly from the sky like a heavy rain. It gathered in the sky and made a galaxy floating like a silky ribbon. The everlasting star power Upanishad was used. Shojiao, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan were covered by the galaxy. They felt cool, but the starlight was so dazzling that they couldn't open their eyes to see. They could only hear the horrendous energy explosions from the attacks and the grumbling cracking of the ancient flaming trees. The volcano under their bodies shattered. They were almost buried alive by the lava and rock. Constant grumbling tremors arose. They wiggled and gathered their god powers to get out of the burning rocks. Then, they found that the 2 warriors of the Charteris family were now just a pulp of flesh. Then, they saw Shiyang holding the 2 blood-dripping bones with some pieces of flesh with arrogant, cold Audrey standing nearby. Shiyang, Shojiao, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan cried in astonishment. They were so happy that they had survived the tragedy. They were so restless. Shiyang gave them a slight nod and then turned back to clean the blood on the bones. After he saw that they were all clean, he respectfully put them away to show his respect to precursor Xian Shan. "Thank you." Shojiao hesitated for a while before bowing to him, talking with a solemn countenance. "I will never forget your favor for the rest of my life." Jiao Shan and Jiao Hai also bowed solemnly. Chapter 1160, It's Watching You. Chapter 1160, It's Watching You, _ Shi Yang stood silently in between the cut limbs and pieces of flesh scattered around the ground. Shi Yang and Audrey had killed the 2 warriors of the Charteris family. With their dominant powers, killing the other 2 didn't cause them to lose anything. Shi Yang was especially not affected by the murderous aura of the gory bone. At the same time, he was able to use his negative energy to suppress the other. It was a piece of cake for him to defeat that poor warrior. Flows of essence chi from the dead that naked eyes couldn't see entered his acupuncture points. It kept his mind focused and his energy remained at an abundant level. Shojiao, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan showed their sincere gratitude. They bowed and looked at Shi Yang with their touched eyes. They acted as if they didn't see Audrey. In their eyes, Shi Yang was their savior who had saved them from the slaughter of the Charteris warriors. Audrey knitted her brow slightly. She suddenly recognized that to Shojiao, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan, Shi Yang was much more important than her. Anyway, Audrey wasn't discontented. After she had known that Shi Yang's real identity was Shi Yang from the Great Four Creatures and that he had fused with the origin like her, she naturally assumed that Shi Yang could earn respect from other people. It was inevitable that people would highly appreciate him. As they were from races of the Great Four Creatures, they had their pride and confidence. They would consider experts like themselves as their allies or enemies. The bloody limbs and pieces of meat under his feet sent out wisps of something like a bloody mist. After a while, those pieces of meat shivered and paled as if they had lost all of the water inside, leaving only dried meat like rotten, dead wood, giving people a nauseating, fearful feeling. Audrey looked at the dried pieces of meat and then at Shi Yang. Her frosty cold face looked startled and her beautiful eyes flashed a hidden fright. Devouring Power Upanishad. Jiao Hai, Jiao Shan, and Sho Jiao didn't notice the strange state of those bloody things. Jiao Shan asked, "Why did you come here all of a sudden?" "I could sense the aura of the Charteris family's warriors." Shi Yang frowned and said in a low-pitched voice, "Your condition isn't good at all. You must recover your god power as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to move further." As Jiao Shan's group had climbed and crawled through the scorching lava, they had almost used up their god power and their mental condition was also really low. No wonder why the Charteris warriors felt excited and attacked them right when they saw them. If they couldn't recover fast and if they weren't killed by the death traps in the center of the ancient continent, the others would find them and kill them easily. Sho Jiao's team understood their situation well. As Shi Yang said so, the three of them didn't hesitate for even a second. They sat down cross-legged and immediately took out the divine crystals to absorb the energy and send it to their essence chi ancient tree. Shi Yang's eyes brightened. He rose one hand, pulling something above their heads. He had forcefully drawn a stream of earth and heaven energy from the sky. He made some hand seals and turned that stream of energy into cotton clouds hovering above their heads. Cool and refreshing beams of energy turned into steam and entered their bleeding holes. The three of them were astounded. "I'll check around." Shi Yang threw Audrey a glance. "Please take care of them for a while." Audrey nodded coldly. Shi Yang smiled and turned into a bunch of starlights before leaving. He disappeared from their sights shortly after. After almost 1 hour, he returned and appeared in front of Sho Jiao's team as if he had just torn the mist to get back. Audrey's eyes emitted divine light as she gazed at him. She looked a little strange. She was the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe. With some unique features of the Soul Altar, she could see even the tiny changes in someone's energy, competence, god body, and more. Within this short period of almost 1 hour, she found that Shi Yang's god power had become refiner and more condensed. Even his body seemed to have been quenched once, which released a robust vitality that she couldn't believe was true. Compared to himself before they fought the Charteris warriors, Shi Yang's fighting competence was now even stronger. The recent battle didn't cost him anything but strengthened him somehow. Audrey took a deep breath. It was hard for her to hide the fear in her beautiful eyes. She was discreetly shaken. She knew why Shi Yang had to leave for 1 hour. She knew what he had done. You can find spirit herbs everywhere in the center. And the energy here is amazingly abundant. You guys can recover soon. Shi Yang stood by Sho Jiao and the other two. A starlight rainbow emerged and released the green, jade-like prickly pears. They flew and stopped by Sho Jiao's group of 3. Although the 1000-year green chalcedony prickly pear isn't an original incipient grade spirit herb, it's handy for the essence chi ancient tree to gather more god power. Swallow it and you can double your recovery speed. The 1000-year green chalcedony prickly pear looked like an emerald calla lily, which looked like real jade with a lot of spikes like a small hedgehog. It seemed really sharp, though. Sho Jiao's group's eyes brightened. They weren't trying to be polite and just opened their mouths and sucked. The 1000-year green chalcedony prickly pear melted and it turned into a green juice with a sweet aroma that ran directly to their body. It then soothed their lower abdomen and the vortex, increasing the flow of earth and heaven energy that entered their bodies. Sho Jiao, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan looked at him with more gratitude. They assumed that he had left for an hour to gather the spirit herbs for them. They had finally recognized him. They had the thought of sacrificing themselves for him. The center of the ancient continent was so perilous. If they made a wrong step, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. And as Shi Yang had taken risks to collect the herbs for them to recover, he had won them over without a battle. Now, they all admired and accepted him. Audrey looked at their grateful faces and she knew that Shi Yang had won them over them. Later on, no matter what Shi Yang asked them to do, they wouldn't hesitate to work for him. It made Audrey feel funny because she knew the truth. That man had just taken the chance to refine his absorbed energy and he just harvested some green chalcedony prickle pear by luck. It cost him nothing to earn Sho Jiao's team's sincere acceptance. Yellow sand filled the place with scorching and humid conditions. Waves of heat swarmed one after another. Altogether, they made people hate that they couldn't just take off their clothes to feel better. Where is the end to this place? Cecilia's graceful body was damp with sweat. Her damp clothes stuck on her body, showcasing her sexy, seducing curves. However, no one could enjoy such a beauty in this place. Not far from her, Shang Yingyu was also covered in sweat. Looking at the majestic holy mountain far from them, she had a deep, powerless despair. Her mind had almost collapsed. After a long time of walking, they knew that this desert wasn't a simple desert. They had tried everything to leave this area, including teleporting, aiming at a direction and running at maximum speed, attacking with the soul energy, and more. Too bad, nothing worked. They were still confined to this burning area. This desert made them desperate as everything was just yellow and scorching. It was draining their god body and dissolving their willpower. They felt that they couldn't endure it anymore. If they couldn't leave this place soon, they would use up their energy, which would leave them with no protection, and eventually, they would become two dry skeletons in this desert. Do you have any solution you haven't tried yet? Cecilia asked when she leaned against a weathered rock exhaustedly. Her beautiful but now blank eyes looked at Shang Yingyu as she muttered, "If I had known I would die here when I was in the lake bottom, I should have." Her glistering cheeks with sweat blushed. She looked as if she was tipsy. "Well, even if you think more about it now, it's no help." Shang Yingyu frowned, her cold face tired. She let out a feeble sigh. "We should have been persistent to go with him. After we have arrived here, Kang Yun has gone. He doesn't want to go with us." "Yeah, it's true. If we have accompanied him, he would have helped us escape the death trap. I don't know why I always feel that he can do everything. Nothing could really trouble him." Cecilia smiled bitterly. Looking at the holy mountain, she sighed, "It looks like it's just ahead of us. But no matter how hard we try, we can't touch it. And we can't contact him. Otherwise, he would come to rescue me. He promised me." Cecilia's eyes looked baffled. It was because she was so tired, and her mentality might encounter some problems. Perhaps she was at the edge of being collapsed. "He won't mind us. He has only himself in his mind. He's truly a heartless, despicable bastard." Shang Yingyu whined as if she was dreaming. Their angry mumbling turned into a magical soul wave that moved fast in this desert. It seemed to be able to raise a sandstorm like some god here had heard them and he decided to give them a hand. While their minds were baffled, they had a lot of fantasy thoughts. They seemed to find an energy wave from the holy mountain that they couldn't touch. It looked like the mountain was teasing them and setting them up for a malicious prank. Who is scolding me? By the foot of the volcano, Shi Yang jolted up. He was so surprised and he looked at the sky. He looked awkward as he didn't know whether he should cry or smile. Sho Jiao, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan were cultivating, their eyes closed. Audrey was also sitting by them. Hearing him, she arched her brows. Her deep eyes shot over the majestic mountain far from them. "What did you sense?" asked Audrey all of a sudden. "It sounds funny, though." Shi Yang shrugged and shook his head. "I can feel someone has just cursed me." The voice reached my ears. "I think maybe I have had a lot of battles recently. I am starting to have hallucinations. With your willpower, realm, and your magical soul, unless you step into the illusionary formation, you will never have hallucinations." Audrey's face was strangely stern. "Recently, I could sense a magical energy wave from the holy mountain. It seems to aim at you. I think it's watching you." Not only was Shi Yang dumbstruck but Jiao Hai, Jiao Shan, and Sho Jiao were also startled and they woke up from their meditation. They looked perplexed too. Chapter 1161, Invest All the Affection. Chapter 1161, Invest All the Affection. Everybody looked at Audrey strangely. She said that the holy mountain was watching Shi Yang. It was unimaginable to the others. It also made them feel funny. Nevertheless, Audrey looked really solemn. She frowned, her eyes slightly mocking. She said, "What's wrong with that?" Everybody shot her a strange look. "That holy mountain is the core of the ancient continent. It's desolate, and desolate has consciousness and intelligence. It's the sole god of this area. It sets up rules and principles. Audrey took a deep breath and then said, "It's like our ethereal extent where we are the only god. We can do whatever we want there. In this place, desolate is the god. It can see every single change, even the smallest one." Everybody was terrified. No one felt funny anymore. Audrey had made herself clear enough. She was the princess of the Imperial Dark Trike, the group of the most intelligent warriors in this world. And she had the origin. They also knew that desolate wasn't just merely an ancient continent. It had consciousness and intellect. If they accepted this fact, what was difficult to understand in Audrey's words? Audrey had made a clear comparison. She said that desolate was the lord of this ancient continent. It controlled and set up rules. Desolate was the sole god here, and no one could shake its ownership. Is it strange that it paid attention to someone? Shi Yang, Shuo Jiao, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan pondered for a while. They then nodded as they had confirmed Audrey's assumption. "I don't know if you should find it your good luck or bad luck. I heard that the warrior who desolate pays attention to wouldn't have a decent ending. He would die soon," said Audrey. Shi Yang's face grimaced. "Why do you say so? Desolate is different from any other creature. It's strong and ancient, indeed. It's the most mysterious creature. No one can understand it. Some say that it doesn't have emotions that a creature should have. It has programmed dead and cold principles. Some say it's strange. Sometimes, it's as innocent as a child, and sometimes, it's as brutal as a demon. In short, we can't treat it normally," explained Audrey. However, everybody looked dumb. Apparently, they had just understood partially. Audrey didn't explain more because the information she knew about desolate came only from the precursors of her Imperial Dark Tribe. "Hey, was it Cecilia or Shong Yingyu's voice calling you?" asked Audrey. Shi Yang contemplated and then nodded. "Yeah, I think so." Audrey pondered for a while before talking sadly. "I heard that desolate is always curious about creatures' emotions, especially love. I think it assumed that there is something between you, Cecilia, and Shong Yingyu. Perhaps it wants to test its thoughts about love." Pausing for a while, Audrey shouted, "I'm giving you advice. Don't make desolate think that love isn't worth a dime and that you can throw it away easily. If you do that, it will feel bored and it will eliminate you directly." "I don't understand." Shi Yang rubbed his face. He felt a little annoyed and puzzled. He didn't know what Audrey wanted to tell him actually. Desolate has some desire for love. It thinks love is something very wonderful for each race. If you make it feel like you're trespassing something pure and beautiful like that, it will kill you shortly. Audrey's voice was gloomy. "You should figure it out yourself. I can only give you such advice. I hope it doesn't happen to you seriously. Otherwise, you would have a tragic death." Shi Yang was surprised. He discolored as he saw that Audrey, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan were looking at him strangely. Then, he found that he was floating up. He was pinned tight in a transparent room and was moving away from Audrey and the other three. Then, he was hauled away through the mist to somewhere he didn't know. "Oh boy, you're right. It's unbelievable." Shuo Jiao couldn't help but shout. He lifted his head and looked at Shi Yang covering in something like a massive blue water drop, moving further and further until he disappeared in their visions. Jiao Hai, Jiao Shan discolored in fright. Shi Yang was completely out of their sights. Shuo Jiao, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan looked at Audrey and asked in unison, "Is he going to be all right?" Audrey shot them a cold, arrogant glance. "It's not me who decides whether something would happen to him or not. We have to see what Desolate thinks about it. If Desolate finds him interesting, it's his fortune. Or else, it's his worst incident." Audrey's expression was so complicated. She, Haig, and Kang Yun had come to this planet with the same purpose. They wanted to gain the approval from Desolate. If it accepted them, they would be successful. If Desolate didn't want to look at them, they would fail eventually. Receiving Desolate's attention was a perilous challenge to anybody. If he received Desolate's approval, it would be much easier to survive in this ancient continent. Of course, the price of the fact that Desolate didn't want to look at them was much worse. Their life seal would be erased directly. Today, Shi Yang was the first warrior Desolate had paid attention to. Perhaps, he would be killed shortly after. But maybe, he could receive Desolate's approval. Audrey suddenly regretted that she told Shi Yang too much. Perhaps, what she told him would change his fate. It would make his consequence completely different. Dash. The scorching desert. Boom. A shadow descended from the sky and grumblingly thrust deep into the sand dune. Crash. Crash. Countless grains of sand furiously poured into the massive hole as if it was about to collapse. Not far from the hole, Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were sighing by the rough rocks. They suddenly saw someone falling from the sky and they thought it was their hallucination. The two women were soaked wet, which revealed the best features of their curvy, sexy bodies. They looked baffled for a while before the clouds in their eyes drifted away as they pulled themselves together. "It's him," Cecilia shouted. She ignored Shang Yingyu's surprise and just tried to urge her energy to fly across the desert. Her flimsy clothes fluttered and outlined her mesmerizing skins. Her breasts bounced as she was so excited. Soon, she stood by the deep hole and rubbed her eyes. She was more astounded as she yelled, "It's not a hallucination. It's real. There's a hole here." Shang Yingyu was wearing a thin blue ice silk dress. Hearing the other, she became thrilled and hurried to reach the hole. Standing by the sand hole, she observed and pitched up her voice, "Shi Yang, Shi Yang, Shi Yang." Her voice expanded and covered every corner around and reached through the deep hole. A figure covered in sand shot out of the hole and emerged. He looked so awkward at this moment. Seeing Cecilia and Shang Yingyu, Shi Yang couldn't help but shout in his mind, that woman was correct. He was actually skeptical about what Audrey had told him. He didn't think that Desolate would pay attention to him. But now, as he saw Cecilia and Shang Yingyu, he knew that Audrey was correct. That Desolate was interested in him. Shi Yang couldn't help but look at the sky. The sky was vivid red as if it was burning. However, there was no sun, moon, or any star. It looked like a sea of fire had covered everything here. With the thought that Desolate was watching him and after seeing the strange sky, he felt so irritated as if someone was peeping on him. He felt annoyed and agitated at the same time. "Why are you here? How did you come here? Tell me, how?" Cecilia couldn't control herself. Her voluptuous, soft body stuck on Shi Yang and her jade-like hand squeezed his arms. Her hand was shaking. Her face showed her thrill of escaping the horrible, desperate situation. She was backed into a dead corner. She thought that she would die here. There was no doubt. However, she regretted something that she hadn't done yet. It seemed that God had heard her prayer that someone had sent Shi Yang here all of a sudden. She thought that it was her karma or her fate. Anyway, she followed it immediately and clutched Shi Yang's arm tightly as if she was holding her whole world. Shang Yingyu was a little better than her. A small, cold hand reached out, trembling and hesitating. All of a sudden, she grabbed Shi Yang's hand and then contracted her arm. Then, she said, "Oh, he's real." She had checked to confirm whether Shi Yang was real or just her hallucination. She beamed brightly like blooming snowflakes. Her glamour dazed people. Shi Yang was actually bewildered. Having a sexy, seducing body in his embrace that was pressing on him passionately like a flame, he couldn't control his desire when the round, big things pressed on his chest. Turning his head around, he found that Shang Yingyu, who was always cold and indifferent, was smiling beautifully. And her pretty smile was for him and because of him. Shi Yang was touched. He became dazed as if he was in a beautiful dream. Although he had the beauty in his lap, instead of enjoying it, he felt insecure. Discreetly, it seemed like the storm had risen and was aimed at him. He remembered what Audrey had told him about Desolate's attention to him. He could feel his paws shiver. His nerves became tense. He felt so uneasy. Slowly, he adjusted his breathing. He had to make himself sober to be able to counter anything that could happen quickly. Shi Yang had utterly forgotten Cecilia in his embrace and Shang Yingyu, who was so thrilled. He had to be vigilant all the time. No, it was not true. He shivered and suddenly recognized something wrong. He became restlessly edgy. It's so curious about creatures' emotions, especially love. Don't bore it. Don't fail it. Audrey's words echoed in his head. All of a sudden, Shi Yang forgot everything. He cleaned all the anxious thoughts in his head and forced himself not to think about his current situation. He made himself believe that he wasn't in an ancient continent or was participating in any training. He considered this desert a marvelous sight, and Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were the beautiful sections of the picture of his life. He forced himself to invest all of the affections here. Chapter 1162, The Cradle of Mazes. Chapter 1162, The Cradle of Mazes. Why are you here? After Cecilia could calm down, she looked a little panicked when she shoved him away and asked skeptically. Shang Yingyu's eyes became placid once again. She was also checking him. Whether it was Cecilia or Shang Yingyu, they had no affection for Shi Yang. They acted like that because they just needed someone to show up when they were on the edge of being collapsed in any minute. Shi Yang arrived when they needed someone the most and gave them the gate to vent out their emotions. That's why they couldn't control themselves. After they had calmed down, they quietly got some distance from Shi Yang. However, it didn't distract them from getting to know how he had descended from the sky like that. Well, I heard someone cursing me, eh? Shi Yang smiled oddly and raked his eyes through Cecilia. He appraised the woman's beauty inwardly and then said, if I'm not wrong, you're the who one had cursed me. Yes, it's me. Cecilia gave him a charming smile. Her curvy body swayed, her round breasts bouncing. Just a look and people would want their mind sinking in there. Although she wasn't as delicate and stunning as Shang Yingyu, she had the advantages of a mature, sexy woman. She was like the attractive, deep lake that could capture people's souls and confine them in there. How could you come here all of a sudden like that? Shang Yingyu was also astounded. She furrowed her bold brow and muttered, as far as I know, nobody could use the soul consciousness in the center. You. I don't think you could use your soul consciousness to seek us. Right. Right. My soul consciousness is bound in this area too. Shi Yang's face became earnest. Aside from me, the same happened to Haig and Audrey. Nobody could continue using the soul consciousness to check out the dangers in advance. So then, how could you? I told you, I heard you guys calling for me. Cecilia let out a low cry, her face different. Well, we were actually talking about him. Did he hear that too? Shang Yingyu knitted her brows, sinking into her thoughts. She didn't say anything. After a long time, she lifted her head and watched the holy mountain far from them, squinting and mumbling. Is it because of it? Shi Yang was shaken. It's true then, Shang Yingyu slightly quivered, her face stiff as she spoke bitterly. I don't know if you're the luckiest guy or the guy who has the worst luck. I don't know if it pays attention to you first. So you know something about Desolate? Shi Yang asked in astonishment. I know something, but not in detail. Shang Yingyu nodded and added, my father told me. What are you talking about? Cecilia felt like she was walking in a mist without seeing the border. She couldn't help but scream. Can you please be more transparent? I don't understand. I used to hear from my father that Desolate would choose someone it finds interesting to pay close attention to. However, the one it has paid attention to was going to die pretty soon. Shang Yingyu's bright eyes looked a little nervous. Not many people could survive to the end. Most of them would perish. Both soul and body. In this planet, Desolate is the soul god. So, are you saying that Shi Yang would die soon? Cecilia's charming face paled quickly. Yeah, if nothing unexpected happens. Shang Yingyu lowered her head. Cecilia could see the sadness on her face. She felt her heart sinking. She felt bitter and upset as when something she liked was smashed before she could get it. It irritated her a lot. It's just like a test. Nothing to worry about, Shi Yang said with a stern face. He seemed to not mind it at all. I can see that your condition isn't really good. We've been confined here for an unknown but long time. This damn place is scorching hot. The sandstorm can run directly into your brain. If you don't use the god power to defend, your host soul will be blown away. It's not easy for us to resist for a long time, jabbered Cecilia. Why didn't you get out? Shi Yang asked and looked at Shang Yingyu this time. It must be a natural, peculiar formation. We couldn't find the solution. That's why we're here until now, said Shang Yingyu. Let me see if I can find a solution, nodded Shi Yang. He stroked the fantasy sky ring. A hazy halo glowed. The sky-breaking shuttle emerged, shining and spinning in front of him. Can you break this maze? He used the soul to talk to the shuttle. Maze. Is it a maze? The sky-breaking shuttle sent him a soul message with unnatural pauses. After a long time, it swarmed him with soul messages. It's a peculiar natural maze. It has the most primal structure. Oh gosh, where are you? The sky-breaking shuttle came from Grace Mainland. It was made by some psychopath blacksmith a long time ago. Shi Yang had an amazing attainment on blacksmithing himself. He could even forge divine weapons, but he still hadn't solved the mysteries of the sky-breaking shuttle yet. He didn't know how that blacksmith had refined the shuttle, which made it the nemesis of all the barriers and restrictions. Its power was unimaginably strong. Each ancient continent had its own mysteries and many things that didn't go along with natural orders. As Grace Mainland was one of the ancient continents that had existed for billions of years, it wasn't strange if it had something peculiar. Why did you say that? Shi Yang was surprised. The sky-breaking shuttle has the tool spirit, which was created by a magical and unique technique. Perhaps a strange encounter or something had derived from that blacksmith's soul and evolved to form the tool spirit. This spirit had the knowledge of that blacksmith of strange things in this world. After this little guy had gotten out of the fantasy sky ring, it tried to sense the surroundings. Right after that, it became thrilled and it made Shi Yang more confident. Since this place was desolate, a place that looked nothing similar to anywhere else, if the tool spirit couldn't find anything, Shi Yang would disdain it. I don't know where it is, but I know what this maze means. The tool spirit was restless. Sometimes, it was strong while at other time it was feeble. Okay, let me explain like this. Every strange formation or maze in the world is a derivation of this place. This is the cradle of all mysterious formations. It's the primary school for creatures to understand strange mazes or formations. Do you get it? Shi Yang was stunned like a wooden chicken. After a while, he tried to probe. You said that the reason why the races could create the mazes or the illusionary formations is that they have observed this maze. Without this place, there would be no countless derivations of mazes and formations in this world. Yes, that's it. Shi Yang felt his brain was exploding grumblingly. Eventually, he had a more visual understanding of Desolate. This planet was much more mysterious than he had thought. Among the 5 ancient continents in this cosmos, Grace Mainland, God Bless Mainland, Ancient God Continent, an ancient demon continent that had given birth to the Heavenly Monster Tribe, the Imperial Dark Tribe, the God Clan, and the Immortal Demon Clan respectively. They were the cradles of all creatures. They had made the Great Four creatures the overlords of this universe or the official master of Earth and Heaven. And the fountainhead of Maze appearing on Desolate was perhaps the fountainhead of many other strange formations in this area. It represented the application of powers Upanishad and it was a unique area in this world. If the warriors could break the mysteries of this place, would they have a much deeper knowledge of the applied powers Upanishads? As soon as this thought emerged, he was so excited as if he had just found a new direction. However, the power Upanishad that used the maze wasn't his thing or suitable for him. He immediately asked the sky-breaking shuttle, "Can you bring us out of here?" "Very tough, but I can try. I'm not sure how much energy I'll need. Perhaps, I have to draw all of your energy." There's another solution. "You can break the mysteries of the maze yourself," said the tool spirit. Shi Yang was hesitant. He suddenly remembered what Shang Yingyu had told him. The ancient continent had different death traps and forbidden areas with different powers Upanishads. If he could break the mysteries of some place that had the same aura as his power Upanishad, he could reach a new, subtle realm that would facilitate his next breakthrough. As he was in the fountainhead of the maze, if someone cultivated such power were here, he or she could reach a new realm after breaking this maze. However, apparently, Shi Yang, Cecilia, and Shang Yingyu weren't this sort of warriors. Otherwise, they weren't sinking deep into this situation. He looked at Cecilia and Shang Yingyu, pondering for a while. I'm going to send you energy. Let's break this place. You'd better prepare. This area isn't similar to any place I've known. I'm not really confident. I don't know if I can break it or not, neither. And I don't know how much of your energy I will take. I can only tell you that when I begin, you have to pump your energy to me unceasingly, said the tool spirit seriously. It seemed not confident at all. Okay. Shi Yang agreed. Right after that, he told Cecilia and Shang Yingyu to ask them to guard him. He sat down cross-legged and moved his soul altar to connect his powers Upanishads. He urged the god power from the ancient tree in his body. Energy shot out from him like a massive column. Swish, swish, swish. Starlight bloomed out from him and congregated in the sky-breaking shuttle. Shortly, the sky-breaking shuttle had taken in the abundant, immense god power. Cracking sounds echoed from the sky-breaking shuttle. Sharp rainbow lights were condensed and intertwined with each other. Slowly, they created an intense light column that shot towards the horizon of the desert. It wanted to pierce through the sky and forcefully make an exit. The veins in Shi Yang's body felt like they were carrying boiling flood. The ruthless energy burst out from his body like an angry dragon. The sky-breaking shuttle exploded grumblingly as if had to bear so much energy, but it was actually making good progress. All of a sudden, a large amount of sand and gravel on the dry, scorching the desert, twirling up into the sky, and creating a giant sand hand and squeezing that light column hitting the sky. Then, it angrily tore the light column apart. Swoosh. The light column from the sky-breaking shuttle was shattered. I turned into countless transparent pieces. Ear-piercing shrieks came out from the sky-breaking shuttle when it was fragmented. Chapter 1163, The Eight Great Chiefs. Chapter 1163, The Eight Great Chiefs. In the twirling sand desert, sand and gravel gathered, creating a towering hand that had twisted. It smashed the light column of the sky-breaking shuttle and shot up into the sky. Consequently, the sky-breaking shuttle broke. The sudden, brutal move of the desert had scared Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. They paled and looked at the tornadoes touching the sky. They felt so small. Boom, boom, boom. The sky-breaking shuttle was smashed into pieces. As soon as its remains fell on the ground, they scattered like ash going with the wind. A mournful shriek came from a walnut-sized cluster of grey smoke as it appeared in front of Shi Yang, sending screaming and screeching to Shi Yang's soul. The turbulent energy in Shi Yang's body suddenly calmed down. No beam of energy rolled out anymore. He paled and looked at the tool spirit in front of him and the formation that only the soul consciousness could perceive. His eyes became colder. The sky-breaking shuttle was broken. Besides the formation that built up the sky-breaking shuttle and its tool spirit, everything else had turned into ashes as if a hand in the dark world had crushed it all. Because the sky-breaking shuttle had bravely challenged its arrangement, the shuttle was destroyed. It wasn't allowed to exist anymore. I can't help you anymore. The tool spirit sounded feeble, just like a wisp of a departed soul. It's so terrible here. I don't know what has happened. It seemed like I'd challenged the god's power. The mighty heaven had punished me. Yeah, it's true that someone had punished you. But it's not the mighty heaven. It's this planet. Shi Yang took a deep breath, his face resuming its calmness. Don't worry. As long as your soul's still here with the core formation, it's not a big problem. Shi Yang was also a blacksmith. He had his attainment and ideas when talking about tools and weapons. The tools that had the tool spirit could become a new living being. The blacksmiths who could refine tools with the tool spirit had a power like the god who had created creatures. The tool spirit was like a human soul while the core formation was the veins and skeleton. The body of the tool was like the human body. As the sky-breaking shuttle's tool spirit and the core formation hadn't been destroyed, it was now like the expert that had his flesh body torn apart and left only the soul and the skeleton. If he could gather or make a flesh body, he could be revived one more time. It was much easier to create the tools, though. I know blacksmithing. I can use different heaven flames. We're in an ancient continent where so many strange and precious materials grow. As long as I find the suitable materials, I will build you another container and inlaid your core formation. You'll be revived that way. Is it okay? Shi Yang sent his soul message. The grey smoke quivered for a while. If you can do what you've said, there is no problem. All right, I will pay attention. Can you tell me the materials needed to refine you? Asked Shi Yang. The tool spirit was so excited. It immediately told Shi Yang the name of many peculiar materials. It asked Shi Yang to pay attention carefully to give him a new life later. I've done all of these for you. I've challenged the god's power. You can't fool me, you know, the tool spirit kept repeating. Shi Yang remembered carefully. Right after that, he stashed the tool spirit and the core formation into his blood vein ring. The tool spirit entered the formation that only the soul consciousness could see. Then, it became a beam of energy and disappeared into the blood vein ring. Standing in the borderless world inside the blood vein ring, the tool spirit yelled happily. It's not bad here. Oh wow. It has the spiritual chi that can help me recover. Oh, it's wonderful. Different from any other fantasy sky ring, the blood vein ring could store creatures. It could create room for living beings in a soul form, which was really marvelous. As far as Shi Yang knows, only the blood vein ring had this ability. He had never seen any ring with the same, miraculous function. Anyway, the blood vein ring was the treasure of the master of the bloodthirstis Cortage of 8. I failed. After he had arranged the accommodation for the tool spirit, his face darkened, talking to Cecilia and Shong Yingyu. I don't have a solution to get out of this area. As Shong Yingyu and Cecilia had been watching him, seeing him take out the sky-breaking shuttle and sensing the energy fluctuate from him, they knew that he was trying to do something. When they saw that the light column of the sky-breaking shuttle was smashed and the shuttle itself was broken, they didn't need to ask to know what had just happened. Did it attack you? Shong Yingyu asked curtly. Shi Yang stooped and looked at the holy mountain in the clouds far from them. It seems like it doesn't want us to act rashly. I'm sure it has a plan and everything is scheduled. We just wait and see then. Then, he sat down cross-legged right in this scorching desert. Contemplating for a while, he took out the gory bones. He placed 9 pieces of bone right in front of him. Those bones looked like they were made of beautiful, transparent blood jade. They all looked shiny and vivid red and it seemed like real blood was running inside the bone. Those bloody bones came from Xian Shan's skeleton. Apparently, Xian Shan was a member of the demon clan. His bones were big, long, and transparent. After being scrubbed and quenched with the mighty power Upanishad, they all had tremendously ruthless auras. Shi Yang gently sensed a piece of them. Squinting his eyes, he released his soul consciousness and stepped into the evil formation inside the bone. It was the evil formation made by the Charteris family. It was an evil contract that forced the ones who had the blood bones to follow Hassan's orders and become his most loyal henchmen. The evil formations carved on each bone were pretty similar. Still, they had something subtly different. Their energy wasn't consistent. The evil formation on each bone seemed to be a component of a horrendous contract. When all the evil formations of the blood bones connected, they formed a wicked formation that was called White Bone Blood Refining Ghost Grave. A wisp of Shi Yang's refined soul consciousness moved around the wicked formation in the blood bone. His soul altar spun. The acupuncture points in his body gushed out negative energy and covered his entire body with death aura. Cecilia and Shong Yingyu discolored. They both sensed the magical changes on his body. They unconsciously moved away from him, pale and fearful. Suddenly, they found Shi Yang's life energy disappear. He was now no different from a dead man. They couldn't recognize any signs of life on him that rose the hair on their nape. The bloody bones in front of Shi Yang suddenly emitted strange beams of blood-red light. Together, they looked like some strange and mysterious formation. The two women exchanged looks. They became ashen when their soul altars felt puzzled. You guys stay away from me. Don't look at me. Otherwise, you will lose control of your souls. All of a sudden, Shi Yang, who didn't have any life energy fluctuation, turned to them and hissed. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu hustled away from him like birds that were afraid of perching on a curved branch. They moved 10 steps away from him and didn't dare to look at him. Back off further. Shi Yang let out a low shout. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia slightly changed their visages. They also felt the blood qi around him getting fiercer. Without much hesitance, they moved further until Shi Yang became a small, red dot in their beautiful eyes. When they found that they weren't affected anymore, so they stopped and finally calmed down. What's he doing? Cecilia frowned. He has the bloody bones, right? I guess he wants to urge their powers to attack the maze of this desert. Apparently not. Shang Yingyu shook her head, her face strange. Those blood bones came from Hassan's soldiers. They should have some background stories. I can see some wicked, mysterious formations of the Charteris family on the bones. I think he wants to clear those formations and make the bones his new weapons. He understands Death Power Upanishad, said Cecilia. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia exchanged looks. They quieted down and said nothing. Fear arose in their eyes as if the warriors who used Death Power Upanishad were the malicious flood or wild beasts. The bloodthirsty force and the Cortege of Eight are from an ancient legend. You and I have never witnessed the power of the bloodthirsty force, but I think you used to hear about them. Cecilia took a deep breath. The God clan has destroyed them so they can be the overlords of this cosmos. And before that, the bloodthirsty force was the common enemy of the entire universe. They were much stronger than the current God clan. Experts of all star areas had to join hands with God clan to destroy this force. I've heard of this legend, but I don't know whether it's true or not. It's true. Shang Yingyu took a deep breath. Her face has never been shaving before. If you know the structure of the bloodthirsty force, you won't doubt that legend or their intimidation. Pausing, Shang Yingyu continued earnestly. The core members of the bloodthirsty force, for example, the leaders of the Cortege of Eight, were all the top warriors from God Clan, Immortal Demon Clan, Heavenly Monster Tribe, and Imperial Dark Tribe. Cecilia discolored in fright and shot Shang Yingyu a baffled look. You meant that the bloodthirsty force had recruited members of the Great Four Creatures? They could live together in harmony and serve the same master. Shang Yingyu nodded and gave more details. To be exact, the core members of the bloodthirsty force were all outstanding experts of the Great Four Creatures. How could it be? Cecilia screamed. The Heavenly Monster Tribe and the Imperial Dark Tribe were always hostile to each other. The God Clan and the Immortal Demon Clan were mortal enemies. How could they form one team altogether? I don't know. Shang Yingyu looked odd. My father told me this. He's traveled around many big star areas. He has a connection with the bloodthirsty force. Shi Yang comes here this time because my father stole my brother's guiding fruit and gave it to him. He came to Agate Star area to pick up Shi Yang and brought him to this ancient continent. Apparently, this man comes from the death inheritance of the bloodthirsty force. Oh, that's how it is. Cecilia was surprised. Although Cecilia had just heard rumors of the bloodthirsty force, she knew how strong this force was. She knew that this force was the common enemy of the entire cosmos. They used to be the tyrannical overlords. Later on, God Clan had joined hand with the other forces around the universe to attack them. Slowly, they were worn out and disappeared. However, they had almost brought a fatal disaster to the God Clan. Rumors said that in the last battle, they had struck ancient Godstar area and give it to the God Clan for severe loss. The women thought that Shi Yang came from the death inheritance of the bloodthirsty force, but they didn't dare to think that Shi Yang's inheritance could come from the master of bloodthirsty force. Chapter 1164. A separate spatial battle. Chapter 1164. A separate spatial battle. A corner of the ancient continent was a strange place where many rough and sharp rock columns grew. However, they were as cold as ice with cold air filling the entire area. Hassan, MIA, U-Man, and the two warriors of the Charteris were sitting cross-legged in the center of this rock forest. They were using divine crystals to refill their energy. Previously, they were attacked by cold gusts and the stone monsters in this rock forest. Their god powers were drained. U-Man's arm was still bleeding. Mia's light yellow dress was torn and it revealed her snow-white skin. Hassan's hair was disheveled. He looked more like a sinister ghost as his body was covered in a brutal, dark aura. He was the first one to wake up. He had something in his mind when he slowly drew a gory bone out of his abdomen. His big, rough-skinned hand gently stroked the bone and he closed his eyes to sense. The two Charteris warriors sat on his right and left, their faces filled with the flame of anger. After a long time, Hassan stroked his bone and said darkly, "I can't sense that brat. We need to move." His two subordinates nodded quietly. 6 hours ago, Hassan took MIA and found them here. Hassan had used the connection between the Bloodbones to find and gather his troopers. Then, he was going to take revenge until Shi Yang was killed. He always wanted to find Shi Yang, kill him and take back the bones he had taken. They were the precious treasures that the Charteris family had spent a huge fortune to refine. Those bones belonged to Hassan only. Even if the owners of the bones were killed, when he came home, the Charteris family could use the power of the bones to find him new suitable troopers. After the new troopers had received the blood bones, he could create the white bone refining blood ghost grave once again, which would help him keep his terrifying fighting competence. The blood bones were the most wicked weapons that were specially customized for Hassan. They could boost Hassan to fight Haig once. Those bones were also sharp weapons for him to compete for the chief position of the God Clan in the future. He would never lose those bones. The divine crystals in Mia's hands turned into powder after their energy was all taken. Her delicate eyebrows twitched. She took a deep breath and then said, "Hassan, how are you?" "I'm okay." Hassan grinned fiendishly. "People say that Haig is the future leader of the God Clan. I don't think so. I'm not convinced. In this ancient continent, as long as I get Desolate's approval, everything will change. Desolate is the most mysterious and strange planet. It has a soul. As long as Desolate recognizes me, even if Haig gets the origin of the ancestral continent, I still want to slash him off his horse. I want to step on him." Hassan didn't have a good reputation in God Clan. He was always stubborn. He would take revenge for every grudge he held. His deeds were always ruthless and bloody with the essence of the Charteris family. That sort of man couldn't get along well with other people or yield to anyone. In their peak of glory, the Charteris family was the strongest among the other families of the God Clan. Currently, all members of the Charteris family had quietly competed against the Bradleys. They wanted to step on the summit once again. Hassan was the hope of the Charteris family. All elders of the Charteris family had tried their best to teach and nurture him. They hoped that he could defeat Haig and could bring the family to a whole new world. Since he was young, Hassan had pledged to make Haig his competitor with a clear target. He wanted to replace Haig and make the Charteris family the leading family of the God Clan. He didn't have many friends in the God Clan. MIA was one of his few friends. When they were just little children, MIA and Hassan were brought to the 5 absolute domain of the God Clan to cultivate ascetically. At that time, he wasn't as strong as MIA. MIA had taken care of him for a while. Hassan always considered MIA his older sister. From that moment, they had formed a strong friendship. MIA didn't like cold, empty men. Haig was that sort of man. In that year, Hassan was really young and simple. The two of them had experienced struggles and difficulties together, which had strengthened their friendship. Haig got the best reward of our ancestral star. If he can get the approval of Desolate, no matter how hard you try, you won't have the slightest chance. "You must take care of this very well," said MIA. "Don't worry. I will win this time," Hassan said with a dark face and took a deep breath. "If I can't get the approval of Desolate, I will try my best to kill Haig on this ancient continent. He'll die or I'll die. Only one of us will become the leader of our clan. I do hope that you could win." MIA smiled at him. Ah. Suddenly, the two members of the Charteris family clutched their stomachs and rolled in pain. Their whining got louder and finally, they screamed with red faces. The blood bones were stirring inside their stomachs. They couldn't control the bones anymore. It twisted their intestines and gave them an incredible pain that made them ashen and tear up. Hassan wasn't also shaken. He pressed his hands on the bone in his abdomen. The veins on the back of his hands bulged like wriggling snakes, releasing an enraged, ruthless energy that entered the blood bone quickly. The peculiar formation on the bone became visible like when someone unfolded a roll of a picture. The bones inside Hassan's two subordinates struggled like beasts that wanted to get out of the confinement. The energy waves emitted by them were terrifying. Grr. The two of them rolled on the ground by Hassan's feet as if someone was tearing their intestines. The formation on their bones glowed and flashed. They seemed to want to get out of their bodies and fly away as someone had erased the wicked formation on them. "What's going on?" Mia shouted hoarsely. "That immortal demon brat. He's messing with us." Hassan looked so ferocious. Looking at his two troopers who couldn't endure anymore, Hassan changed his face and then extended his hands. He placed his hands on the heads of his two subordinates. Boom. Boom. The skulls of Hassan's two troopers were crushed. The host soul in the soul altar exploded directly like a fragile egg, sending away the broken pieces of soul remnant. Hassan wore a cold face. He didn't even look at his warriors who had just died tragically. He waved his hand and retrieved the two pieces of bone. Taking a deep breath, he stabbed them in his abdomen. He said with a wince, "Their souls weren't strong enough to hold the blood bones. I have to destroy their souls and use my soul to control the bones. That's how I can counterattack that brat." Man watched him silently, his face pale. He shivered as he witnessed Hassan's cruel act. Mia knitted her brows. Although she didn't really agree with Hassan, she didn't say anything. In her eyes, Hassan's warriors were paws of a cat that the Charteris family had arranged for him. It wasn't a big deal when they died for him. After Hassan had squeezed off the head of his warriors, their souls have broken altogether, but they hadn't become ashes. They suddenly ignited and burned. At the same time, their bodies withered and dried up, releasing the powerful energy that then entered one end of the three bones that jutted out of Hassan's abdomen. They boosted Hassan's power instantly. The burning purgatory was the wicked power Upanishad of the Charteris family. Warriors who were bestowed with a blood bone understood this power Upanishad. Hassan had used the special features of their soul and bodies to activate the burning purgatory through the wicked formation, which supplied him abundant energy instantly. Now, Hassan could strike Shiyang hard and he could kill Shiyang even though they weren't in the same location. The surging, terrifying energy poured into Hassan's blood bones. Then, his intestines and veins twisted around the three blood bones as if they had eyes. Hassan faced the sky and roared, trying to mobilize his god power. He sent his soul into the evil formation of the three blood bones. Despite the distance, he could activate another deadly ability of the white bone refining blood ghost grave. In the desert, the 9 blood bones in front of Shi Yang were shaking. All of a sudden, Shi Yang paled as if he was hammered badly. His body trembled hard. Cecilia and Shong Yingyu were near him. Seeing his condition, they discolored and shouted, "What's wrong?" Shi Yang had blood trickling down the corner of his mouth. His eyes became icy and cold. He waved at the 2 women to signal them that he was all right. Then, he closed his eyes once again. A wave of lethal death energy emitted from him. The pale wisps of grey mist slowly floated out from his acupuncture points and congregated in each of the blood bones. The magical formation on the blood bones dimmed out as if an invisible brush was cleaning the evil formations carved on the bones. Swoosh! A bloody bone pierced through the desert from nowhere. No one knew how far it had traveled before it halted right in front of Shi Yang. Now, he had one more piece of bone. PFFFT. Shi Yang spurted out blood, which sprayed on the 10 pieces of bone. They became gory with a strong blood smell. Shi Yang's face was paler. In this ancient continent, the remaining Charteris warriors, whether they were struggling in the death trap or closing their eyes to meditate, had their souls shaken. They were guided and drawn by a terrible energy floating up into the sky and flying in a direction. Boom! 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 The Charteris warriors fell in front of Hassan. Wicked aura meandered around Hassan as he shouted, "Give me your best to resist this." Each of the Charteris warriors immediately understood that Hassan had used the forbidden white bone refining blood ghost grave to burn his soul and body to guide them here. They didn't say anything and surrounded Hassan before sitting down cross-legged. Then, they urged their energy to help Hassan counter the enemy. Hassan's condition wasn't good. Everybody knew that when he urged his power to the Acme, it was also the time when he was in the biggest danger. It was the common disaster of the Charteris members. They were using their burning purgatory power. Upanishad, Mia and Uman exchanged looks. They could see how serious this situation was. They knew that Hassan and Shi Yang was engaging in a bloody battle even though they were thousands of miles away from each other. And this time, their struggle was much more perilous than the previous time. If Hassan failed, all of his subordinates would also be killed with him. Shi Yang would be able to take all of Xian Shan's bones. The blood bones that the Charteris family had to spend countless types of materials to refine for Hassan would become a sharp divine weapon in Shi Yang's hand. Chapter 1165, Capture the Heart. Chapter 1165, Capture the Heart. In the desert, Shi Yang spurted more blood. His blood looked like pieces of dark ruby that sprayed on the 10 blood bones. The formations carved on the 10 bones were so vague. They were almost cleared. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia looked at him and felt so tense. They were worried that something bad would happen to him. They hoped that he could resist until the end. As things had come to this, they could see that Shi Yang was fighting Hassan one more time. They all knew how crazy Hassan was. They were worried that Shi Yang couldn't defeat Hassan and his soul would break. His life would be over because of those 10 bones. However, Shi Yang was much stronger and tougher than they thought. His body transformed. Slowly, he had the immortal demon body. Each drop of immortal demon blood was boiling inside his body and releasing immense, evil energy waves. Layers of silky clothes made of starlight gradually covered his immortal demon body and sank him into a dreamy, transparent cloak. When Shang Yingyu and Cecilia saw him like this, they felt that he was so perfect. The two women were astonished. Their beautiful eyes looked at Shi Yang strangely. Swoosh, swoosh. The exquisite blood line flew out of the 10 blood bones when the wicked formations on them vanished in just a blink of an eye. Countless blood lines floated and flew away, heading towards Hassan. Shi Yang's tense nerves were relaxed. He felt so exhausted. However, he was laughing happily as he was excited to watch the 10 blood bones. The blood bone with the stains of immortal demon blood in Shi Yang's body became more crystal clear and garnet. They were fulgent and twinkling as if they were blood crystal. Although they looked beautiful, they all had a brutal, deadly aura. Now, they could be combined with Shi Yang's bones. Looking at the 10 blood bones and feeling the close connection with the blood in his body, Shi Yang knew that he didn't waste his efforts. From now on, these 10 pieces of Xian Shan's bones would become his real sharp weapons. The Charteris evil formation had turned into fine bloodlines and flew away. For the time being, they wouldn't be any threat to him. Boom, boom, boom. The 10 pieces of bone fell on the ground. Shi Yang smiled and also lay down relaxingly. Those bones belong to me for now. Although I got hurt, it's worth it. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia exhaled in relief. Cecilia cried, "How about Hassan?" "I don't know. I guess he won't be better than me. Anyway, I got 10 bones. He lost them." Shi Yang grinned. Those blood bones belonged to Xian Shan, an expert who cultivated death power Upanishad. I got the inheritance of the death power Upanishad. He wanted to fight me. Harumph. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia exchanged looks. They could see the strange feeling in each other's eyes. Shi Yang had just confirmed his relationship with the bloodthirsty force. The two women felt a little insecure. They quieted down and said nothing about the bloodthirsty force. They knew that it wasn't the right time. Inside the rocky forest, Hassan was bleeding all over his body. His face was as pale as a sheet of white paper. He looked so savage and dark. The members of the Charteris family standing near him also grimaced. They felt so powerless. Although they had helped Hassan counter Shi Yang, they couldn't stop him from cleaning the wicked formations on 10 blood bones. Afterward, it made them felt so dispirited that they couldn't beat Shi Yang up. It annoyed them a lot. As they had followed Hassan for years, they had met many kinds of enemies. After years of battling, they had never received such a big loss. "Hey, are you all right?" Mia asked, her face worried. "I'm all right. That brat has the death power Upanishad inheritance. He has a subtle, magical connection with Shen Shan's bones. It's not easy to get the bones." However, Harson didn't sound dispirited. "At least I gave him a hard strike, which means he won't recover in a short time. I'm sure his power is reduced by half. And my power isn't reduced." What he had burned were the bodies and the souls of his two subordinates. Indeed, he didn't spend anything significant. "As long as we find him, he will be dead," Harson said gloomily. He thought he got the upper hand, but he didn't know that his near death. "We need to move now. Check around. If I can locate him, he'll be smash." Then, Harson stood up. Mia and Man exchanged looks. They didn't say anything because they knew Harson's desire of killing Shi Yang had been prioritized beyond everything else. At the same time, they had to bear a lot of bitter fruits from Shi Yang. They thought that should take the chance to kill him. In the desert, the furious sandstorm became stronger and it terrified people. The unceasing wind howling echoed in their ears. The entire desert seemed to become an enraged beast. It was getting wilder and stronger. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia darkened their face and watched the storm raising sands to the sky. They felt so bitter. They had stayed in this desert for a long time. They knew that it would have sandstorms every 3 or 5 days. They had to bear a lot of trouble here. The two women had consumed a lot of god power and their mental condition wasn't really right. And Shi Yang looked even worse than them. And now, as the sandstorm was rising higher in the sky, should they bury their bodies in this damn place? What should they do? The two women looked at each other, seeing despair in each other's eyes. They couldn't do anything but sigh. Looking at the sky, they knew that Desolate was trying to torture them one more time. And now, as Shi Yang was here, the sandstorm seemed to be much wilder and more savage. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. All of a sudden, the sand under their feet collapsed inwardly. As they hadn't reacted yet, they fell together with Shi Yang into a deep hole that appeared all of a sudden in the desert. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia changed their faces. They rose their hand, clutching Shi Yang's arms. Together, one on his left and one on his right, they fell into a bottomless abyss under the desert. "Ag!" Shang Yingyu shouted. Deep in the bottom of the pitch, they could see twinkling, sharp crystals. They jutted into the air from the ground like the sharpest swords. They were the icy, transparent crystals that looked really marvelous. However, they had the cold light of sharp metals. As they were falling at a speed as fast as lightning and they were so close to those sharp, pointy crystals when they descended, they were going to be pierced through. Because Shang Yingyu could recognize what those crystals were. They were the icy soul cold crystal. They were the original incipient grade material and the extremely cold ones. And they were Shang Yingyu's primary target when she came to the ancient continent this time. It would be the critical point for her to break through to incipient god realm. The icy soul cold crystal was the hardest thing in this universe that many divine weapons couldn't cut it. The icy soul cold crystal could be used as the mysterious divine weapons of the warriors who cultivated the ice power Upanishad. Its hardness, coldness, and sharpness were all the best of the best. Shang Yingyu urged her power and tried to reduce her falling speed. Cecilia did the same. Unfortunately, the ground down there had a terrifying gravity. No matter how hard they had tried, they couldn't overturn the situation, so they could only follow their fate and fall. Despair filled their hearts once again. As the two women were clutching his arms and his condition wasn't good after the battle with Harson as it cost him a lot of energy, he couldn't even urge half of his power to create the flood of energy to stop his body from falling. Anyway, the more dangerous the situation was, the calmer Shi Yang became. Thoughts flashed through his head as he tried to find a solution. Desolate is so curious about love. Don't make it feel bored. Don't make it less interested in you. What Audrey had told him echoed in his head one more time. His thoughts flashed like the holy spear when he made up his mind rapidly. He wanted to bet once. He bet that Desolate was watching all of these. He bet that Desolate is tricking him. Seeing that the three of them were about to touch the ground, he decided quickly. The bones in his body sounded like fried beans. A new force was generated. He swung his hands forcefully. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia were moved by his force. A cushion of starlight appeared above his head to bear Shang Yingyu's and Cecilia's soft bodies. Right after that, he used his immortal demon body to fall on the sword-like sharp icy soul-cold crystals. Puff, puff, puff. His immortal body couldn't bear the piercing strength of the icy soul-cold crystals. His body was pierced. 3 icy soul-cold crystals had drilled through his body from his feet to his shoulder. His body and internal organs were penetrated. He had to bear 1,000 blades slashing him at the same time. This heart-pricking pain was so hard to endure. Shi Yang roared and hissed when his body seemed to be shattered. His consciousness became hazy, and Shang Yingyu and Cecilia were put above his head. They stayed on the cushion he had created with his last pieces of power that kept them safe from harm. You let your body down to give us a chance to live. Cecilia had tears on her eyes. The lake in her heart rippled as if someone had thrown a stone in there. She was so touched. Shang Yingyu bit her lower lips. A strange light emitted from her beautiful eyes. She quivered but said nothing. I can't die yet. Shi Yang was bleeding, his blood making a dark red puddle on the ground. He smiled at them. You guys, please get down. My starlight cushion can't bear you for a long time. The 2 women were shaken. They hastened to jump off his head and moved their slender thighs to land between the icy soul-cold crystals. They then observed him with bright eyes that made him a little scared. Are you all right? Here, swallow these pellets. Quick, melt them down. Shang Yingyu talked to him in a tender voice that he had never heard before. She took out some red pellets that were as big as longans and shoved them into his mouth. I'll help you melt the pellets. Cecilia's jade hand pressed on his chest. A beam of supple power slowly poured into his body and carefully helped him melt the pellets. Shi Yang enjoyed their care and his face strange. He looked around and became bewildered. He shouted as if he was so thrilled. You guys, look. Let's see where we are. The 2 women turned around to look. They were filled with astonishment instantly. They couldn't hold their scream of surprise. Chapter 1166, Desolate's Generous Gifts. Chapter 1166, Desolate's Generous Gifts. Countless multicolor crystals stood by them and sparkled dazzlingly. Those crystals were there for so many years to accumulate earth and heaven energy. The energy inside them was powerful and abundant. The warriors who could see those things would be dumbstruck. Oh gosh! Cecilia and Shang Yingyu shouted. They covered their mouths as they were so astounded. Their hearts were filled with joy immediately. The exquisite jades and gems stacked up like wooden logs. They were so shiny that they could daze people easily. The ice soul cold crystal looked like they were condensed from frost and mist. The fire jade was as red as the most beautiful flame. The water heart crystal seemed to have real water murmuring inside. The fresh wood crystal had a wood texture. The refined gold crystal looked like the precious gold. The absolute earth crystal was transparent in a marvelous amber hue. The crystals with the powers of 5 elements were glowing in radiant and glorious halos right next to them. The energy that surged from those crystals was so wonderful. Those items were the top treasures of each class of powers in the world. They were all original incipient grade materials that the warriors could use to refine their bodies or create weapons. They could also absorb them directly to enhance their god power. With various functions, they could bring the warriors unimaginable benefit. As they could survive this lethal death trap, they were so happy. And now, looking at the priceless crystals around the ground, they thought that they were dreaming. Each of those original incipient grade materials was a top treasure in the world. In this vast sea of stars, they were the top 5 element treasures to be met by chance, not to be earned by demand. Warriors had a hidden love for each of them that no one wanted to show to others. The original incipient grade materials could trade an entire lifestar since it could help warriors understand the true meaning of powers Upanishad to break through to a new realm rapidly. However, in this area, There were so many that they were scattered around like cheap pebbles. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu shivered slightly. They couldn't even talk normally. Apparently, they were still panic-stricken. They all said that Desolate is the most strange among the ancient continents. It contains countless precious items in the world. Today, I believe that. Shi Yang winced in pain after each word. He felt so bad that it was like the pain when someone was slashing his body piece by piece. Of course, Desolate is special for producing the top treasures of earth and heaven. Only this area that hasn't been trespassed can have so many treasures like that. Shang Yingyu didn't pay attention to his pain. Her beautiful eyes still lingered on the icy soul-cold crystals. She was calculating to which level she could develop her power when she got those crystals and when she could reach incipient God realm. Just like Shang Yingyu, Cecilia was watching the water heart crystal with desire. The water heart crystal had a heart shape. It was like a big drop of water with sounds of murmuring water echoing pleasantly to the ears. Such souls reached her ears and she felt like she received some bit of invisible power, giving a tonic to her soul altar. She felt so comfortable as if she was studying her water power Upanishad. They were so thrilled and they seemed to lose their control when they saw the original incipient grade crystals. Their minds were wandering around the benefits they could have. For the time being, they forgot Shi Yang. Then, they heard a scream in pain. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu hurriedly reacted and pulled themselves together. They used their jade-like hands to stroke his bleeding wounds. And they softened their voices to ask him. They were so gentle to him at this moment. If Shi Yang hadn't shouldered the danger for them at the critical moment, the two of them would have been pierced through by the icy soul-cold crystals. They would have died because their god bodies wouldn't bear the icy soul-cold crystal. They would have died instantly. The two women had a little feeling for Shi Yang. After this event, Shi Yang had risked his life to protect them in despair, which had carved his image in their hearts. Thus, when they treated Shi Yang now, their attitude and even their voices had changed. Shi Yang felt warm when their soft hands consoled his bleeding wounds. He smiled naturally. I have to get rid of these crystals first. You should give me some room. Will it hurt? Just slow down, okay? Can you endure that? Hold on. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu became so gentle. They worried about him so much, more than they had ever before. It's all right. A long pain is worse than a short pain, right? Move away. Shi Yang tried to wave his hand once. After they backed off to give him room, he forcefully urged his power. A surging flow of energy shot out of his body. He gritted his teeth and jumped up. His bones and veins cracked again as he soared several meters up into the air. Right after that, he landed in the gap between the crystals and bled badly. He then crouched on the ground like a puddle of mud and used his immortal demon blood to close the wounds. His wounds were even longer than the slash from a sword. They looked so bad that people doubted if he could heal them or not. The two women could even see his broken veins and cut intestines. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu felt a twitching pain in their hearts. They couldn't stand watching him, so they turned around, their eyes watery. It was the first time they felt hurt because of a man. Shi Yang tried to smile. He crouched on the ground and closed his eyes to sense. His eyes were filled with pain. The situation of his wounds was much worse than what he had expected. He had used half of his energy in the battle with Harson and his body was also hurt. And now, he was pierced through, which made him felt like he was dismembered. If he hadn't endured so much pain and difficulties throughout so many years, he was afraid that he wouldn't have been able to endure this pain. If he didn't faint, his mind was going to collapse. Since his life was rough and he had spent all of his time struggling to survive, his willpower was terrifyingly strong. That's how he could endure it until now. He didn't shame himself by fainting. Gritting his teeth, Shi Yang urged his power Upanishad and used the immortal demon blood to heal his wounded body. His face changed again. After getting hurt twice, he had used a lot of his immortal demon blood. He couldn't even keep his immortal demon body. The immortal demon blood wasn't unlimited. Shi Yang had to condense each drop. They were the essence of his blood chi with the power of life power Upanishad. Only when his immortal demon blood was brimming could he recover his current severe wounds. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to heal his terrible body. Shi Yang became stern. He didn't have much affection for Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. The reason why he had to pay this big price of having his body damaged badly to rescue Cecilia and Shang Yingyu was that he wanted to make a big bet with Desolate. And now, he knew that he won. Desolate didn't continue to attack them, but let them appear in this marvelous land of divine crystals. They were the generous rewards that Desolate had bestowed them. "How are you? Are you all right?" Shang Yingyu and Cecilia asked him, their beautiful eyes filled with sadness. They were so worried that he would have some big problem. "I'm okay," Shi Yang shook his head and tried to give a smile, "but if I want to recover fully, I need some magical encounter, perhaps. Sigh, let me think." He looked at the wonderful crystals around and frowned. "You guys can help me check around. Let's see if you can find something good for blood chi. If you can find something, I can recover faster. Otherwise, I will be in big trouble. Wait for us. We're going to search around." Cecilia and Shang Yingyu glided away. Their bodies swayed through the place like butterflies, flashing their voluptuous butts and thighs that would make people aroused. Shi Yang chuckled. He tried to endure the pain to pull his body into a sitting posture. He took a deep breath and then urged his life power Upanishad to activate the most magical healing ability. He let his soul and consciousness gather in the immortal demon blood to trigger the recovering power of the blood to heal himself. He didn't believe that he had gained something good from his unintended action. Since he wanted to compete with Desolate, he had captured Cecilia's and Shang Yingyu's hearts, although he didn't intend to. From their expression and emotion, he knew that they had good feelings for him. Of course, it was still far behind the degree when they would sacrifice their lives for each other. However, the affection they had for him wasn't unreal. If he invested in it, he was confident that he could have Cecilia and Shang Yingyu in his place and make them his women. Since this place was the ancient continent, Desolate's exclusive territory, if he wanted to survive and decode Desolate's mysteries, he had to continue playing for his life, Cecilia's life, and Shang Yingyu's life whether he liked them or not. He had to force himself to like them. That's how he could deceive Desolate and get what he wanted from this ancient continent. Pondering for a while, he had made up his mind. A moment later, Cecilia returned with nothing. Her charming face was reluctant. "The area I searched doesn't have anything suitable for you. Your powers Upanishads are all strange. And the crystals here are all the common ones. I can't find anything good. It's all right. I can still recover anyway." Shi Yang consoled her and then waved his hand at her. "Come here with me." Cecilia walked to him. Her sexy body was outlined by a silk dress, which flashed her flat tummy that didn't have any scar and half of her creamy thighs. Her round breasts bounced while she was walking. Her hot, sexy body leaned against Shi Yang. She was like a delicious, ripe peach that people would hate themselves for not being able to sink their teeth into. Shi Yang laughed and pulled her hands so she would jump onto his lap after sitting next to him. Then, he started to claim her lips passionately. Cecilia responded wildly. Her snow-white hands pulled around his rough neck and lingered on his broad back. However, she was careful enough not to touch his terrible wounds. She gasped and tried to tangle her lips with his. When they were in the pond, Cecilia had felt it disgusting when Shi Yang touched her. She wasn't really fine with it as she had shown him at that time. She was persistent not to use her body to make Shi Yang help her in the ancient continent. It showed her last border. Anyway, since the lake in her heart had Shi Yang's image, she didn't reject him anymore. And because his wounds were still there, she had just followed him. Of course, it was Shi Yang's evil plan. Right now he was bullying her as his big hands were stroking her sexy, creamy thighs, her round butt, and her ample bosom without retracting. His eyes were so hot that he had almost taken out his spear. Cecilia's face was red as if blood could drip from her face at any minute. However, her blushing made her more seducing. She tried to push Shi Yang away, struggling to make some room between them. She told him off with a voice of the mosquito. "Do you know where we are? If you want to do something, at least you have to wait until your wounds are recovered. Shang Yingyu, we'll be back at any minute." Shi Yang smiled relaxingly. He didn't force the woman anymore. Looking at the charming Cecilia while she was enraged and embarrassed and had lust in her eyes, Shi Yang felt much better. He nodded and lowered his voice, "Then you have to let me, when my wounds are healed." Cecilia bit her lips and nodded. She blushed and glanced at him. "You bastard. You can't erase your lustful mind even though you are in such a condition. My hands are tied because of you." Shi Yang just laughed. Chapter 1167, Healing. Chapter 1167, Healing. A corner of the ancient continent. Hassan, MIA, Man, and some members of the Charteris family were moving through an immense forest. They had just survived a lethal death trap. Hassan was using the bloodbone to locate Shi Yang. MIA, Man, and the others were exhausted, but they didn't complain. In this ancient continent, each step was dangerous. And they couldn't stay idle in a specific area. Hassan led the group. All of a sudden, his brows twitched. He smiled evilly. "I found him." Everybody was cheered up and they looked at Hassan. "In that direction. It's a little far from us. But I'm sure that we can reach there in 20 hours. He's in a desert. I could even feel the heat there." Hassan grinned fiendishly. "To get the blood bones from me, he got hurt. He couldn't recover in a short time. As long as we find him, we will kill him and I will take back the blood bones the Charteris family had refined. Then we should move now." MIA wore a cold face and she snorted. "This man killed my entourage. He even robbed my 7-colored spirit flower and my 7-colored demonic flower. If I don't destroy him, I will never feel all right again." After they had navigated, they moved immediately and headed to the desert. Also in the forest but in another location, Audrey, Shoujiao, Jiao Hai, Jiao Shan, Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Wu Bai were walking to the holy mountain. They had found Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Wu Bai 10 hours ago. Wu Feng's team had just gotten rid of the ice sculptures. Audrey found them, so they joined Audrey's team and headed to the holy mountain. Shoujiao arched his brows and looked in the direction ahead of them. He said, "There's a desert ahead of us." Everybody looked at him bewilderedly and asked for more information. Because in this center, even Audrey couldn't use her soul consciousness to check the surroundings. How could Shoujiao? "My name is Shoujiao, which has the same pronunciation as desert. I was born and in the desert and I grew up there. The life GU I've been cultivating is the sandworm." Shoujiao looked at the others and said confidently, "I'm so used to the smell and aura of the desert. My sandworm can sense the energy fluctuation and the familiar heat of the desert. Don't worry. My life GU won't make a wrong guess this time. Ahead of us is a desert." "So what?" Mo Fu asked as he didn't have a clue. "He's there," Shoujiao smiled. Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Wu Bai didn't understand him, but Audrey, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan were bewildered. They reacted immediately as they knew the one who Shoujiao had referred to as he could only be one person they knew, Shi Yang. "My life GU will be boosted marvelously when it comes near the desert because it was incubated and born in the desert. It can be said that my GU is the master of the desert so it can sense what I can't." Shoujiao explained, "He's there. My life GU remembers his aura." "I'm sure about this." Audrey, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai hesitated for a while, but then, they headed towards the area that Shoujiao had pointed. They surprised Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Wu Bai. They looked at Shoujiao, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan skeptically. And then, they realized that something had happened between Shi Yang and these three. Otherwise, they wouldn't act like that. In this ancient continent, only joining hands would help them resist the God Clan and survive. That's why Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Wu Bai didn't have any strange actions. They all followed the others. Under the desert where there were so many beautiful crystals, Shi Yang was laughing and talking to Cecilia, making her blush. She shot him her shy glances from time to time. "Hey, look at you. You are still so reckless even though you've gotten such wounds. I don't know how you've managed to survive until now." Cecilia was blushing, but she wasn't outraged. Her pretty eyes were smiling as she felt really sweet. "Hey guys, check what I've found." Shang Yingyu's clear and cold voice arose from a distance. It seemed like she got something. Cecilia retracted her hand from Shi Yang's hand. She looked awkward as she hastened to adjust her clothes. Right then, she sat upright as if nothing had happened between them. She lifted her head and asked, "What did you find?" Shang Yingyu wasn't as experienced as Cecilia. She couldn't see anything strange between the other two. She was still sinking in her joy. Blood essence stone. It's the blood essence stone. I found the blood essence stone. She cheered and glided towards the other two. She stood by Shi Yang and showed him around 10 strange fist-sized stones. They looked like they had real blood inside. Cecilia's understanding of earth and heaven materials wasn't as good as Shang Yingyu's. At first glance, she looked confused. She didn't know how precious or magical the blood essence stone was. Shi Yang was shaken. He gazed at the blood essence stones and sighed, "Turns out the mighty heaven does care about me. It's really good for you." Cecilia was also excited, her face cheered up. "Tell me, what can it do for this asshole?" The blood essence stone is the original incipient grade material. To the immortal demon clan, it's the best tonic. It can supply blood qi to help condense more immortal demon blood and make the process faster. Shang Yingyu beamed weakly and looked at Shi Yang. "Am I correct?" "Yingyu is right. The blood essence stone is the top treasure to me. It can give me a speedy recovery. I've heard about this but never seen it with my own eyes. I heard that only the ancient demon continent has this kind of stone. I didn't expect to see it here. It seems like I will be healed soon." Shi Yang grinned. Because his mood was so good, he fondly called Shang Yingyu by her name Yingyu. Shang Yingyu was always indifferent and cold. Hearing him addressing her dearly, her lukewarm face blushed. She became a little helpless and didn't know what to say. She fumbled and placed the blood essence stones in front of Shi Yang. She looked panicked as she took several steps back. She shivered and her mind was like a ball of cotton. She didn't know how to deal with this awkward situation. In fact, she hated Shi Yang a lot, even before they had entered the ancient continent. She had made up her mind that she would trouble Shi Yang a lot because he had seized her brother's chance to enter the ancient continent. And he had come to assist her and caught her in odd situations, which deepened the grudge she had against him. Everything had escalated quickly beyond her estimation. As she wanted to take revenge on the Bai family, she had unwillingly accompanied Shi Yang. Inside the invisible light cage, Shi Yang had taunted her and made her hate him more. Gradually, the longer she had stayed with him, the more mysterious she found that he was. Shi Yang was like a deep lake that she wanted to explore how deep it went. As things had changed, she had eventually accepted Shi Yang under the threat of the God Clan. She had grouped him with Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and the others. After some serious events, the way she treated him also changed. In the desert, while she and Cecilia were hopeless without a hand reaching over them, Shi Yang appeared out of nowhere. It was the first time he had touched her heart. Currently, Shi Yang had protected her regardless of his life. He was willing to let his body be smashed so she could be safe. It was a final arrow hitting her heart that left an image there. However, since she was a little girl until now, she had never had a feeling for any man. She also lacked experience in talking to men. Hearing him calling her dearly like that, she blushed and got flustered. She felt a little dizzy as she didn't know what had just happened to her. Instinctively, she dodged and didn't dare to look at him in the eyes. However, after thinking about it, she found out that she wasn't angry when he called her fondly like that. Quite the contrary, she felt a little joy. He called me so fondly but not Cecilia. Does it mean that I'm more important than Cecilia to him? Shang Yingyu thought. With these blood essence stones, my god body will be healed fast. Shi Yang threw Shang Yingyu a glance. She looked like she had a bunch of fawn running around. Yingyu, you're excellent. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be getting better soon. Shang Yingyu's face was tepid, but the corners of her mouth pulled into a curve of joy, her bright eyes twinkling. Cecilia smiled but her eyes didn't. She glared at Shi Yang and said awkwardly, "Oh right, she's useful while I'm useless. I can't help you with anything." Shi Yang gave a reluctant dry cough and then said, I need to recover using the blood essence stones now. You guys should collect all the crystals here. We shouldn't give this good chance to anybody else. The two women were stirred up listening to him. Since his situation was stable now, they didn't need to worry about him more. Their flames of desire for the treasures burned one more time. They regarded him and didn't wait for him to talk more. They rushed around like the two butterflies. They started to harvest the precious stones. Taking a deep breath, Shi Yang adjusted his mood to the best condition, picking up one stone from the other 10 lying in front of him. Boom! Immortal demon blood boiled in his body as if it was stirring up the energy of the blood essence stone. The smaller crystals inside the blood essence stone looked like a blood diamond releasing abundant waves of energy. The immortal demon blood in his body ignited. Beams of magical, pure blood chi flooded in, fusing with the immortal demon blood in his veins. As soon as they had entered his veins, his demon blood condensed faster. It was almost instantaneous as one ruby drop was produced, and it gave him a marvelous feeling. It seemed like the blood essence stone had helped him urge the energy of his flesh body. It was just a small blood essence stone, but the energy it had sent him was endless. Shi Yang thought that he couldn't use it up this time. The blood essence stone was worth the top treasure and was most suitable for the immortal demon clan. The blood chi from one stone had brought him incredible energy. Shi Yang felt so good that he wanted to laugh out loud. The wounds in his body closed and healed at a speed that naked eyes could observe. However, it was several times faster than before. The cut veins were connected. The broken bones were fixed and become even tougher. His flesh wiggled and closed little by little as if someone was sewing them all together. After a while, he looked intact without even a tiny scar. The immortal demon body was so marvelous. After he got the supply of energy from the stone, he knew that he would fully recover quickly with only one piece of the blood essence stone. The energy stored in this stone was way beyond his estimation. What a wonderful original incipient grade treasure. He suddenly felt grateful for Shang Chen because he had arranged for him to enter this area. To Shi Yang, this place was a treasure. As long as he put his head in it and searched more, he would receive the best surprise of earth and heaven. Finally, Shi Yang knew why the outstanding prodigies of the God Clan and the other star areas in this cosmos had risked everything to get here. This place had things worth paying with their lives. Chapter 1168, Show the inferior face to the enemy. Chapter 1168, Show the inferior face to the enemy. It was only one piece of blood essence stone and it was enough to provide Shi Yang with rich blood chi. It had helped him refilled the immortal demon blood and it also refined his body's containing capacity to another level. The immortal demon blood was the power generator of his immortal demon body. Filled with adequate immortal demon blood, the damages to his god body were insignificant. After the blood essence stone was used up, it became a plain stone. Shi Yang's god body was fully covered in a blood cocoon. Life energy fluctuations surged immensely inside that cocoon and it gave people an impression of seeing something with endless vitality. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were so excited as they were collecting crystals with different characteristics. The ice soul cold crystal looked like they were condensed from frost and mist. The fire jade was as red as the most beautiful flame. The water heart crystal seemed to have real water murmuring inside. The fresh wood crystal had a wooden texture. The refined gold crystal looked like precious gold. The absolute earth crystal was transparent in a marvelous amber hue. Those were all the original incipient grade materials with the powers of 5 elements. Each of them was priceless. The two women harvested the crystals, putting them in the special containers. The piles of crystals around Shi Yang disappeared quickly. When there was no crystal around them anymore, Shang Yingyu and Cecilia laughed contentedly and returned to Shi Yang. Then, they saw him shrouded inside a blood cocoon where life energy surged torrentially. "How is your harvest?" Cecilia smiled charmingly, light twinkling in her eyes. "More than 60 pieces," Shang Yingyu arched her brows happily. She couldn't hide her joy. "They are so huge that they take a lot of room. Luckily, I've prepared properly. Before I came here, I've thought of this. I brought many fantasy sky rings. The crystals and jades here weren't small at all, and they had similar sizes. Although the number of them wasn't more than several 100,000 pieces, dozens of original incipient grade jades sounded terrific enough. She got a huge fortune. What she had collected included the crystals of ice and thunder classes, which were so important to her cultivation. They could help her break through to incipient god realm more easily. Cecilia had focused on collecting the water heart crystal and then the absolute earth crystal and fire jade crystal. She had dozens of them in her fantasy sky rings. Now, she was smiling to her ears. And as Shi Yang's condition was stable, they could ease their minds, chatting with each other. "Hey, girl. Have you had any plan for the future?" Cecilia hesitated for a while before asking softly. "We have to get out of here anyway. After that, what do you want to do with him?" She extended her hand and pointed at Shi Yang. Shang Yingyu's elegant face blushed a little bit. She bit her lower lip and muttered, "I don't know. Let's see what happens then. He and my father have a connection and he's in Agate Star area. It's not really difficult to find him." Lifting her face, she looked at Cecilia and asked, "Your star area is very far from his. How about you? What's your plan?" Cecilia beamed like a blooming flower. She soon had a plan and she spoke frankly. "After I've arranged things in my family, I will go to Agate Star area to find him. I've made up my mind. If I go with him, my life will be more colorful." "Haha. You can give up your family?" Shang Yingyu was surprised. "After I've reached incipient god realm, I won't be too dependent on my family. With these treasures, no matter where I choose to stay, I can live a better life," said Cecilia relaxingly. Shang Yingyu showed her respect. She looked at Cecilia with admiration. Swish. The blood cocoon covering Shi Yang was torn, its pieces turning into blood-red powder and scattering. Shi Yang appeared naked. His lean, beautiful built body emerged as if each of his muscles was carved by the most skillful craftsman. His god body looked like it was molded out of metal, which was full of the masculine attractiveness of a robust man. Shang Yingyu jerked back as she was startled. She didn't dare to look at him, her heart beating hard. She cursed him under her breath. Cecilia was much braver. Her beautiful eyes scanned Shi Yang's body as she smiled gently. "Oh wow. Not bad at all. It makes my heart beat faster." She laughed and threw a glance at Shang Yingyu, making the girl shyer. "Hey, how are you?" Cecilia asked tenderly and stopped teasing Shang Yingyu more. Shi Yang beamed. "The blood essence stone is truly the most suitable divine material for the immortal demon warriors. Don't worry. After using the energy stored in one stone, I've fully recovered. And my immortal demon blood and my body are all improved." Listening to him, Shang Yingyu and Cecilia could finally ease their minds. "Let's get out of here." Shi Yang lifted his face looking at the flaming red sky. They were under the desert on a hard rocky ground. It looked like a massive well dug deep into the earth. The wall of this well had many extruding rocks that which they could use to climb back to the surface. "We have to go back there now." Cecilia discolored slightly. "The desert has many scorching storms and we can't get rid of them. I'm afraid." Shang Yingyu and Cecilia had been walking in this desert for a long time. They couldn't get out of it until Shi Yang had arrived. However, the area under the desert was quiet enough and it wasn't affected by the stone and sand over their heads. She wanted to stay here for a while. "It should be easy to get out of the desert now," Shi Yang smiled and explained, "because the maze is solved." When he was using the blood essence stone to heal his body, he could feel a little change of the desert above his head. Sensing for a while, he knew that the barrier had disappeared. That's why he wanted to leave this area. Hearing him, Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were so thrilled. Then, Shi Yang and the two women used the extruding stones on the wall of this pitch to climb up to the desert. They reappeared in the middle of the desert one more time. "We can finally get out of here." Shang Yingyu cheered. The holy mountain that used to be so far from them was now in their sight. They could even see the smaller peaks around the holy mountain. Apparently, they weren't illusions anymore. They were all real. "You guys should use those original incipient grade crystals you got to recover. We will depart later." I will protect you guys while you're cultivating, said Shiyang. The two women didn't babble. They sat down cross-legged next to him and used the water heart crystal and the icy soul cold crystal to take in the energy. As those crystals matched their powers Upanishad, it recovered their god power really quickly. Shiyang could sense the energy fluctuations in their bodies surging and becoming torrential. It was the sign of gathering and producing god power. The original incipient grade materials with the same attributes with the warrior's power Upanishad were the purest source of energy in earth and heaven. To the warriors with matched power, those crystals were like big hearts that could pump them power and give them the essence of the power Upanishad. At the same time, they could use the crystals to create weapons. They could be deemed treasures for multiple purposes. Holding the water heart crystal and the icy soul cold crystal, Cecilia and Shang Yingyu quickly gathered their god power. Their skin started to glow and it made them more beautiful. Shiyang looked around and changed his visage right when he was about to sit down to cultivate. Hassan is coming, he hissed. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were filled with fear. They jolted up from their cultivation and looked at him with stern faces. It's all right. As I'm now at my peak condition, even if Hassan comes here, he won't take anything good from me. Well, if they want to seize the chance and attack me, I'll show my weak face to them. Then, he urged his energy and made his face pale, concealing his energy fluctuation. His makeup made people think that he had consumed a lot of energy. Do you know anybody else besides Hassan? He is coming with the members of his Charteris family. I could sense them only. It's because of the blood bones. I'm not sure if some other people have accompanied him. Anyway, we must be cautious. Wearing a stern face, Shiyang shouted. Don't care about too many things. You guys should seize the time and recover. Hassan will come here, but not now. You must recover your energy to the peak. Then, we will meet them. The two women pulled themselves together. They resumed their absorption progress to take the energy from the original incipient grade crystals. They had to refill their energy quickly. Shiyang wore a dark face as he waited in silence. Thoughts flashed in his head. Rattle, rattle. All of a sudden, he heard some tiny noises as if some insects were moving through the sand of the desert. Shiyang looked baffled. The ancient continent didn't have any spirit animals or insects. It had only flowers and plants with consciousness and strange crystals. How could this desert have insects? An earthy yellow insect that looked like a scorpion made its way out of the sand. This insect had only one dull, yellow eye. It looked at Shiyang and sent him a soul thought. Shiyang, this is my life Gu. I sent him to you first. We're on our way. We'll get there soon. It was Shojiao's voice. Shiyang was surprised and he sent his soul message. Besides you, who else is going with you? Audrey, Jiao Hai, Jiao Shan, Mo Fu, and the Wu brothers. We're going with each other, answered Shojiao. You guys slow down. If you come early, Hassan's team won't dare to come. Shiyang contemplated for a while and then continued, you guys wait for my signal. Just stay by the edge of the desert. You can use the GU to locate me. Don't stay too far. We need to wait for Hassan's team to fall into our trap. Shojiao reacted, understood. I'll notify them. Good. Shiyang smiled and stood up with a dark face. He looked in Hassan's direction. He could vaguely sense the bloodthirsty desire from Hassan's team. Apparently, Hassan thought that Shiyang was still hurt and he wanted to take this opportunity to kill him, giving him no time. When Shiyang sensed Hassan's aura, he found the distance between Hassan and him had been shortened rapidly. Hassan's team was moving at their maximum speed. It seemed like they couldn't wait any longer. Good then. Shiyang gave a faint smile. He hadn't gathered all of Xian Shan's blood bones yet. His chance was coming. Chapter 1169, The Icy World. Chapter 1169, The Icy World. By the edge of the desert, Audrey, Jiao Hai, and Jiao Shan were looking at Shojiao. They stood and waited for Shojiao's news. After a while, Shojiao opened his eyes and said in a low-pitched voice, I contacted him. Everybody was excited. He said that Hassan's team was coming to kill him. He told us to stay here and not to act rashly. We need to wait for his signal. Sho Zhao's eyes looked so sinister as he said, if Hassan dares to come this time, we'll give him a fatal strike. Can you talk to him all the time? Asked Audrey. Of course. My life GU is next to him. I can see his move from time to time, said Sho Zhao confidently. Audrey eased her mind and said coldly, that's good. We'll wait here. Just let Hassan arrive first. Then, we will block their exit. Her line of sight moved to Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Wu Bai as she asked indifferently, do you have any idea? You shall decide everything, the other three agreed. In this dull world of yellow sand, Hassan, MIA, Yu Man, and the others moved like swift shadows, flashing and disappearing. Hassan's body was so thin like a wicked demon. The murderous aura twirled around him, which looked real. He looked so dangerous. The warriors of the Charteris family were so ruthless and insane. Their energy fluctuated and matched with Hassan's. We're almost there. Hassan's cold and gloomy voice echoed. He surfed through the sand like a bunch of light. Mia's team followed him closely. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Just like a rainbow descending from the sky, shadows emerged and surrounded Shi Yang, Cecilia, and Shang Yingyu in just a blink of an eye. There were 9 of them including Hassan, his 6 warriors of the Charteris family, MIA, and Yu Man. Their sudden appearance had surprised Shi Yang's team and gave them the bewildered look. Shi Yang's face was pale and his blood chi level was low. At first glance, he seemed to have gotten hurt badly. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu looked a little better. However, they still gave people the impression that they didn't have enough energy in their bodies. It looked like they had just survived a severe battle that had already worn them out. MIA and Yu Man exchanged looks. They both felt happy as they thought that Hassan wasn't wrong. Shi Yang surely looked wounded. She assumed that they had a greater chance to kill Shi Yang this time. She became excited immediately. Be careful. He can use space power Upanishad. MIA reminded in a low voice. The center of the ancient continent isn't similar to the outer realm. He can't use the space power Upanishad to run away. Don't worry. Hassan waved his hand. Looking at Shi Yang, he grinned fiendishly. Hey, we meet again. Yeah, hello there. Shi Yang darkened his face. He looked as if he was trying to look strong. You think you can subdue me when I'm wounded or even kill me? Well, I don't know what kind of storm you can rise this time. Hassan waved his hand and the Charteris warriors put their hands into their stomach to draw the bones out of their little by little. Instantly, a murderous, bloodthirsty aura shot up into the sky from behind their backs like the real blood column. Hassan had brought 18 warriors in total. Shi Yang had taken 10 blood bones from them. Hassan killed 2 of them to prevent Shi Yang from taking their bones. Today, he had only 6 warriors with him. They were standing in a hexagonal formation, centering Shi Yang's group of 3. However, they were watching Cecilia and Shang Yingyu and they didn't dare to consider Shi Yang as their target. Hassan's bony body changed. He quickly transformed into the undying god body. He looked even thinner, but the energy in his god body was rocketing. Just like him, MIA had transformed into her undying god body too. Her pretty eyes were so cold and harsh. She gazed at Shi Yang as she said coldly, we should calculate our debts too. Should you give me back my 7-colored demonic flower and the 7-colored spirit flower? Oh, I'm sorry. I used them all. Shi Yang squinted and showed his hands. Mia's eyes shot out murderous intentions. She gave a curt nod and said, Hassan, I'm joining you. No need. Hassan shook his head and said determinedly, I want to kill him myself. You just need to kill these 2 women for me. Do not let anyone escape. MIA frowned, cursing under her breath. However, she could do nothing but focus on Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. You can't transform to your immortal body, can you? Hassan slowly drew the blood bone in his abdomen. The evil formation carved on the bone slowly moved, releasing intimidating power, which was like the giant mouth of a wild, crazy beast. It snatched over Shi Yang and attempted to swallow him. The sinister thoughts that could distort the soul and slow down the soul altar rolled torrentially, stirring up Shiyang's sea of consciousness and making him puzzled. The 6 warriors of the Charteris family cooperated closely with Hassan. They grabbed the blood bones and murmured some strange, wicked incantation. They had created a blood net that could bind all creatures and snatch over Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu discolored in fright. Their soul altars suddenly trembled hard as if the blood net had shrouded them and pulled them out. They couldn't control their soul altar. Boom! Boom! Massive bolts of lightning weaved in the sky. The sharp icicles jutted out of Shang Yingyu's head, moving around and attempting to cut the bloody net. However, the blood net wasn't a real thing. It was like a special soul attack that was aimed at the soul and soul altar. Even though Shang Yingyu's lightning and icicles were strong, they couldn't strike the blood net or cut it into pieces. Their soul altars were still shaking hard and trying to fly out of their heads. 1,000 times heavier gravity. Mia opened her jade-like hand, pressing on Cecilia and Shang Yingyu from a far distance. Instantaneously, Cecilia and Shang Yingyu shook as if a massive mountain was placed on their backs. They had to bend as they couldn't bear that impressive weight. Swoosh! Swoosh! Their soul altars flew out of their head and even their host souls were perceptible. The women became panic-stricken. Crack! 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 Shang Yingyu's eyes looked resolute when she shouted and made strange hand seals. 5 sharp icy soul-cold crystals flew out of her fantasy sky ring. They all looked like the most beautiful icicles releasing cold air that was chilly to the bone and could freeze and break everything. The icy soul-cold crystal was the original incipient material that she could use directly like the most terrific divine weapon. When it was in the hand of the warriors who cultivated ice power Upanishad like Shang Yingyu, once it was urged, it could release the icy power that could freeze the entire world. Its lethality was unimaginable. Boom! 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 Just like space here that was shattered, the gravitational field Mia had created dissolved. As soon as the icy energy of the icy soul-cold crystal emitted, a cold white air diffused and froze the entire desert. The sand and big rocks were frozen and they broke. The entire desert became an icy world at a speed that naked eyes could observe. Wherever the cold air passed by, the whole place changed. The blood net created by the Charteris warriors was covered by the cold white air. It was frozen and then shattered into tiny pieces of ice. Hassan's 6 warriors had no color on their faces anymore. They retreated in fear. Mia and Yu Man were fighting Cecilia and Shang Yingyu when they had to run away when the white air came over. They didn't dare to approach Shang Yingyu anymore. As Hassan and Shiyang were fighting fiercely, when the white air swarmed over them, they felt so chilled. They shivered and in the next moment, they were frozen. Their veins and internal organs had become ice, turning them into 2 ice sculptures. Cecilia had the same consequence. She had turned into a crystal ice sculpture as Shang Yingyu's cold energy had crossed over her. After dozens of seconds, the entire desert had become a frosty world with a glacier and 3 ice sculptures. Only Shang Yingyu stood in the middle of this icy world, looking at the 5 icy soul-cold crystal planted on the ground by her feet. She looked so terrified. She had heard that the icy soul-cold crystal was the sharp sword of the warriors who cultivated ice power Upanishad. She knew that it had marvelous effects and she could take its energy to improve her god power. She could also use her soul to study it and comprehended the ice power Upanishad. She could additionally use it to refine treasures or use it directly as a weapon. Her father had told her these things. The icy soul-cold crystals were her main target coming to this ancient continent. However, as she had just triggered the power of the icy soul-cold crystal, she knew that her father hadn't told her carefully about the real power of the icy soul-cold crystal. The power of the 5 crystals was enough to turn the entire scorching desert into the world of ice. She had even frozen Hassan and Shiyang. She understood that she had just released 10% or 20% energy of the crystals. If she used them all, would she be able to turn an area of tens of thousands of miles around to ice and everybody else into ice sculpture? She was panic-stricken. Shiyang, Hassan, and Cecilia were now ice sculptures. Mia, Yu Man, and the 6 warriors of the Charteris family had seized the chance when the cold air hadn't reached them to run away at the fastest speed. No one had the guts to approach this area. She was baffled for a while and then turned to Hassan, who was frozen now. A cold light flashed in her eyes. Although Hassan's entire body was frozen, his soul also wasn't. He was thinking about how to get rid of this. Seeing Shang Yingyu's cold eyes glaring at him, Hassan's sea of consciousness surged powerfully. He had just urged his Charteris secret technique called Burning Purgatory to resume his energy. His energy burst off and released him from the confining ice. At the same time, a red flame burned on Shi Yang's body. The icy aura of the icy soul cold crystal intruding his body was dissolved by the power of the combined flame of the Purgatory True Flame, the Vermilion Bird True Flame, and the Earth Flame. The top Yang Heaven Flames could dissolve the power of the icy soul cold crystal. Chapter 1170, Real Competence. Chapter 1170, Real Competence. Crack, crack. The ice covering Hassan's terrifying god body shattered. Pieces of ice fell on the ground around his feet. As he had used the burning purgatory power Upanishad of the Charteris, his energy had rocketed. While Hassan crushed the ice, Shi Yang wasn't idle. The heaven flame shrouded his body. After it washed over him, the ice was melting and the water started to drip. When the ice was melted, Shi Yang's veins were cleared, so he circulated his god power once again. It sounded like the heavy rain had poured down when Shi Yang moved his body, sending countless drops of water to the air. He had gotten rid of the ice layer shortly after. Wisps of flames were still moving around his body to prevent the icy energy from entering his body once again to seal him. He frowned and looked at Cecilia. A flame flew out of his fingertip and then started to burn the ice on Cecilia's jade-like neck. Her body covered in ice began to melt down like his. After her skin was warm again, she finally got rid of it. Shang Yingyu stood behind the 5 icy soul cold crystal, her soul altar spinning. She was still connected to the icy soul cold crystal. She had just used 10% or 20% of the icy soul cold crystal's power. However, this amount of power was enough to freeze Shi Yang, Hassan, and Cecilia. She didn't dare to urge more power of the icy soul cold crystal. She just stood in a daze and watched Hassan, Shi Yang, and Cecilia recover. So cold. Cecilia was startled. She felt her entire body and soul get chilled to the bone as if she had just got out of the ice chamber. If that small flame didn't protect her skin, the cold air could still attack her another time and freeze her. Different from Hassan and Shi Yang, Cecilia cultivated water power Upanishad. The inside of her body was filled with water, which would make her get frozen more easily. She would recover slower than the others. "Are you all right?" Shang Yingyu paled and stopped drawing the energy of the icy soul cold crystal. Looking at this icy world, her clear voice trembled. "I didn't expect the icy soul cold crystal to be so powerful." Cecilia was freaking out and she asked her to stop. "You should control it well. I can't stand it." Boom. 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 All of a sudden, the broken ice around Hassan's feet twirled and rolled up into the air. The sharp pieces of ice were like sharp daggers filled with evil energy. All together, they darted towards Shi Yang. Hassan's eyes were so evil. He grinned fiendishly while his skeletal body had the energy rocketed. He made the hand seal to trigger the energy in his flesh. At that short moment, his body became even thinner. However, he looked more perilous. "I want you to die." Hassan smirked haughtily. Thud, thud, thud. The broken ice hit more than 10 layers of space energy above Shi Yang's head. It sounded like the nails thrusting into the wooden board. Lifting his head and looking at the sprinkle of ice attacking him, Shi Yang touched his glabella. His eyes suddenly became the vast starry sky where countless starlight dots moved out and created a halo of starlight layered over his body. "You can only resist in pain like this." Hassan sauntered, his face dark and gloomy. He squeezed his blood bones with both hands and sent beams of his blood into it. Savage energy fluctuated from his hands and exploded the air. The world of ice under his feet collapsed and shattered. Countless pieces of broken ice became a crazy downpour that showered Shi Yang endlessly. He had around 10 layers of space barriers and his body was shrouded in layers of starlight. He looked like an ancient god who was protected by stars in the sky. When the ice touched him, it would explode and vanish. Hassan's hands had a powerful suction force that swallowed earth and heaven energy of this place like a massive vortex. It felt like the sky was down and was flooding his palms. However, when the massive amount of energy flowed into his palms, his hands weren't ballooned with energy. Quite strangely, they dried up like ash-white claws that were really freaky to the other people. The cold, dejected, and sinister aura that shot out from Hassan's dry claws had created a desolate world that tried to pull Shiyang in. Shang Yingyu and Cecilia stood not far from Shiyang. Under that strange space, they both had deep despair arise from their soul that would confine their souls eternally. They knew that it was an evil secret domain of Hassan. Death or life by the heart, earth and heaven turn over. Shiyang suddenly smiled and both of his hands grabbed something in the air. One hand of his was full of vitality like the source of life while the other hand had a lot of death chi like the scythe of death. A mountain-like death seal and a life seal emerged in the void. They then merged into one. The death and life power Upanishad was fused magically into one seal, which was glowing in a strange black and white light. It spun quickly in the air just like the hand of demon that could destroy everything. Boom! The desolate, dead silence world released from Hassan's palms was struck. It shook and sparked many beams of ash-grey light. Starlight from nine-tiered sky be the lance. Shiyang hands moved vertically as if he wanted to draw all the stars in the sky. His arms twinkled dazzlingly with a layer of starlight. The glowing halos of the stars in the vast nothingness fell like the galaxy was descending, creating a starlight lance with the power of earth and heaven. It stabbed directly on the desolate world Hassan had built. That world had cracked by the death and life seal previously. As it now received the thrusting starlight lance, it shattered and sent light dots everywhere. At first, everything expanded and shrank into a speck of light before disappearing in just a blink of an eye. PFFFFT. Hassan spurted blood. He looked at Shiyang wildly and crazily. You aren't hurt. You weren't hurt. Shiyang nodded nonchalantly and said earnestly, I wasn't hurt. My power even grew. When you found me here, I was in my best condition. Then, he squinted and looked in a direction where something that looked like a scorpion made its way out of the ice and waved its tail at him. You guys can take action now, asked Shiyang. The demonic insect nodded as if it was a human. Then, it swiftly dug into the ice, its aura disappearing shortly after. It was Sho Zhao's life Gu, the spoiled child of the desert. Shang Yingyu's world of ice had just covered the surface of the desert. Deep under the ice was still the hot sand where the scorpion could promote its power to the most. Once it got under the sand, no one could sense it. The desert and this insect was one. You still have some helpers. Hassan changed his visage. Looking at the sand insect get into the ground, he knew that something was going wrong. Before Shiyang could answer, the blood bone that Hassan was holding suddenly quivered. Hassan's chest had to endure a sudden attack. He closed his eyes to sense. His 6 subordinates were assaulted. The hiding enemies seemed to not be far from them. They were the eyes that had been watching them silently. As soon as Shiyang gave them his order, they would storm over to tear Hassan's warriors apart. Hassan understood now that Shiyang had deceived him. He was tricked. You two go help Sho Zhao, Zhao Hai, and Zhao Shan. Leave this to me. Shiyang turned his head and nodded to Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. After hesitating for a while, he told Shang Yingyu, bring the icy soul cold crystal away. This toy is really dangerous. Next time, you have to be more careful. Shang Yingyu looked a little embarrassed. Her cold face blushed. She bit her lower lip and retrieved the icy soul cold crystal before running away. If Shiyang didn't have the flaming origin, she would have damaged Cecilia and Shiyang badly. Shang Yingyu felt a little guilty. Be safe, Cecilia smiled and followed Shang Yingyu. She wasn't really worried because Hassan was hurt now and Shiyang was still intact. If there was a winner for this battle, it wouldn't be Hassan. You think you can kill me? Hassan looked at Shiyang and asked Cecilia and Shang Yingyu to leave. His eyes became more bloodthirsty. At the same time, his body still had a lot of energy. He grabbed his blood bone and took a deep breath, trying to calm down. It's good that you want to make an end with me. I think the same, you know. Oh right, we do need an end. Shi Yang nodded and closed his eyes to sense and then said, you should leave too. He looked in a direction. The sand insect underground sneaked out again. Then, it turned into a beam of yellow light that shot away from this area. It disappeared in just a blink of an eye. Just the two of us here now. Shi Yang stroked the blood vein ring, bloodlight twinkling in his eyes. His god body shriveled while the pale energy jutted out of his acupuncture points. Sharp thorns emerged from his body. Shi Yang now had the immortal demon body. The blood vein ring flashed a blood-red halo. A gory sword emerged. The closed eyes on the massive sword slowly opened. The fearful, brutal, wild, and intimidating energy shot out of Shi Yang's body, diffusing like a terrifying sea and covering the entire area where he and Hassan were fighting. The sinister, murderous aura of earth and heaven from this sword was much more savage than the bloodbone that Hassan was clutching. Hassan felt fear for the first time. He was baffled and he looked at the blood sword. He vaguely remembered that someone had told him about this word. However, he couldn't remember right now. The eyes on the bloody sword opened. The entire world seemed to turn into a world of blood. The sky and ground looked bloody when a bloodthirsty aura filled this world. Shortly after, it gave people the desire of murdering. Hassan's negative desires were aroused. He felt right into madness. He couldn't think about anything but he urged his burning purgatory and stormed towards Shi Yang. This is my real competence. Shi Yang's eyes became as red as if they had blood drip out. The blood sword in his hand moved in a slash. A blood-red river appeared with many islets made of white bones, which vaguely created a formation. From a bird's view, people could see that those white bone islets had formed the blood clouds, which was the family crest of the bloodthirsty force. Chapter 1171, Resurrected. Chapter 1171, Resurrected. The blood sword came from the Chasm Abyss battlefield in Grace Mainland. It looked like it came from the sky, but in fact, it was the secret treasure of the master of the bloodthirsty force. The crimson eyes opened and Shi Yang deliberately cut the air. A blood river appeared in the sky with many bone islets that formed the shapes of bloody clouds. Shortly after, the river shrouded Hassan. Hassan continued to burn his soul and flesh, squeezing his blood bone. The energy in the blood bone shot out like a rainbow and streamed. However, no matter how Hassan tried to wiggle, the energy from his blood bone couldn't pierce through the blood river. And at the same time, the blood river had absorbed part of his energy. Hassan rapidly drew his god power to an intimidating level of an incipient god realm warrior. The energy in his flesh body was so earth-shaking that it had created a magnetic energy storm. It could crush everything. He wanted to use that storm to resist the blood river. The white bone islets that looked like white clouds in the river seemed to be the source of evil things in this world. They connected with Shi Yang's acupuncture points and made him full of negative energy. A deadly thought of destroying every creature suddenly flooded the entire area. Hassan had the power as strong as Shi Yang's, and because of the bloodbone, his power somehow connected to Shi Yang. However, when Shi Yang took out the blood sword, Hassan's god power and power Upanishad were subdued. Also, he felt so begrudging as if he was restrained. He continuously burned his blood, flesh, and soul to raise more energy. This burning had drained his chi, spirit, and soul gradually and changed his life magnetic field. However, his energy was still increasing. Shi Yang held the bloody sword in his hand, his soul altar slowly spinning. The deadly aura from his body could draw the aura of anything else into him. The more he fought, the stronger he became. When he swung the blood sword, his god power gushed out and created another blood river, making a cross in the sky. The crossing point of this point was above Hassan's head. The blood light dripped as if it was the real viscous blood. Hassan's undying god body couldn't resist this attack. When the bloodlight dropped down, explosions and breaking sounds echoed. Hassan's bones exploded. His body became weak. Although his energy was still abundant, he looked helpless. Shi Yang had used all of his power and mobilized the most brutal death power Upanishad, his immortal demon body and the rampage to strike the other. He didn't retain anything. That's how he had reluctantly gained the upper hand. It was because Hassan had underestimated Shi Yang and gave Shi Yang the chance to hurt him with the Death and Life Seal and the Starlight Lance. If Shi Yang didn't use the blood sword, he could only get the slightest advantage. Hassan was the rare expert Shi Yang had ever met. He was the extreme kind that could insanely hurt his body and soul to attack the others. He made Shi Yang discolored in fright. Shi Yang had to gather all of his energy to attempt to kill him here. By the edge of the desert. Audrey, Jiao Hai, Jiao Shan, Mo Fu, Wu Feng, Wu Bai, and Shuo Jiao were joining hands to fight MIA and the God Clan's warriors. Cecilia and Shong Ying-yu came as they were not far from them. They joined the battle and tried to kill MIA and Yu Man. All of a sudden, Audrey felt a vibe in her heart. She couldn't help but lift her head to look at the center of the desert. Jiao Shan, Mo Fu, and the others could also recognize something. Even Cecilia and Shong Ying-yu halted while heading toward them. They all looked in the direction where Shi Yang and Hassan were fighting. The sky was scarily red as if it was painted with fresh blood. A flow of savage, bloodthirsty aura shot out grumblingly from the desert. This kind of intimidating energy made Audrey shiver. She looked aghast indeed. Jiao Shan, Shuo Jiao, and Wu Feng were pale and they shivered. They had sensed a terrifying pressure from deep inside the desert. It was like a giant demon in the ancient time had just woken up. They faced the sky and roared. They had a desperate, dispirited feeling that made them want to bow. So intimidating. Audrey's breast heaved as she was taking deep breaths. Her exquisite face was filled with fright. The battle between Hassan and Shi Yang could reach such a degree. It was really earth-shaking. Everybody quieted down all of a sudden. MIA, Yu Man, and the Charteris warriors also looked dark and solemn. They instinctively looked at the center of the desert in fear. Shuo Jiao, what's going on over there? Your life GU is there. You should have gotten something, right? Wu Feng suddenly shouted. Audrey's pretty eyes immediately focused on Shuo Jiao. Shuo Jiao quieted down and closed his eyes to sense. Then, he shook his head. Rattle, rattle. A scorpion-like sand insect got out of the sand and flew into Shuo Jiao's mouth. It looked a little scared. Shi Yang frowned and gave a forced smile. Shi Yang sent it away. I don't know what has happened there. Audrey was very surprised. She hesitated for a while and then said, You guys stay here and deal with them. I'm going there to check them out. He said that he wanted to fight Hassan once. Please respect his decision. Shong Ying-yu stopped her with a cold expression. We're here. It means that he didn't want anybody else to interfere with him. Please stay. Cecilia also nodded and glanced at MIA and the Charteris warriors. She said deliberately, when we left that place, Hassan was hurt severely. If nothing unexpected happens, he'll die. Hearing her, MIA and the Charteris warriors grimaced. Audrey pondered and then nodded. She stayed at her spot. As Cecilia, Shong Ying-yu, and even Shuo Jiao's life GU were sent away, Audrey understood that Shi Yang had something that he didn't want anybody else to know. Thus, he had asked everybody to leave. Whether he was the immortal demon or a member of the bloodthirsty force, he had many secrets. If Shi Yang didn't want people to know or sneak on him, getting there would make him turn his back to her. Audrey understood it well. She wasn't persistent. She moved her focus on Mia's team once again. Then we just need to finish these. We have no objection, Jiao Shan, Wu Feng, and the others agreed cheerily. Cecilia and Shong Ying-yu also joined the battle, teaming up with Jiao Shan's team to attack MIA and Yu Man. Audrey looked at the desert and frowned, then, she turned to MIA. Shi Yang will kill Hassan. So, I'll kill you. Mia's eyes shot out strange light and said fearlessly, although the Imperial Dark Tribe isn't ordinary, it's not easy to kill me. Let's try. As soon as Audrey's voice vanished, the Dark God Imperial Throne emerged and connected the underworld and this area. The wailing ghosts and departed spirits from the endless dark abyss roared and shrieked. They attempted to nibble Mia's soul altar. The center of the desert. As Hassan was shrouded in the blood river, his blood and flesh were torn off his body and they sprinkled on the ground. He looked as if he was skinned alive, which was so miserable to see. Even though he was in such a situation, Hassan was still crazy and ruthless. He was rolling and crying inside the blood river, trying to show Shi Yang his intimidation before he died. Shi Yang crazily poured his god power into the blood sword. He felt his energy was running out. The open eyes in the blood sword were using his god power massively. And the two blood rivers crossing in the sky was the energy of his entire body performed using the blood sword. To create the two blood rivers, Shi Yang had to use almost all of his energy, which had also drawn half of his negative energy. Since he had come to this world, he had never endured such a terrible battle. Hassan's strength was beyond his estimation. If his power Upanishad couldn't subdue Hassan and if he didn't have terrifying tricks, it would be impossible to make Hassan this helter-skelter. He knew that Hassan was now a lamp running out of oil. He didn't dare to approach Hassan as he was afraid that Hassan would commit suicide and drag him altogether. Shi Yang didn't care how cruel and terrible Hassan's roaring and cursing was. He just stayed deep inside the blood river and held the sword, pumping more energy to wear Hassan out little by little. He didn't look at Hassan either. Gradually, Hassan's painful screeching faded out and disappeared. After a moment later, Shi Yang couldn't sense the life energy fluctuation from Hassan anymore. He changed his power Upanishad, retrieving the blood sword and the two blood rivers. Thud. Thud. Hassan felt from the sky and landed on the ice that was scattered on the ground. He looked like a gory skeleton. Walking to Hassan, Shi Yang could see his internal organs, but there was no fluctuation of life energy. Shi Yang knitted his brows tightly. Although Hassan's god body remained, his soul was burned down because he had madly urged the burning purgatory. That's how he was killed. Shi Yang's thoughts changed. He extended his hand to grab the bone that Hassan had clutched before he died. The blood bone from Xian Shan flew to Shi Yang. Swoosh. Swoosh. Two pieces of the blood bone flew out from Hassan's body. They were both from Xian Shan's skeleton. One of them was the key bone that helped Hassan control and made his subordinates die for him. This one had a special evil formation. Hassan's soul energy had ceased. The drawings of the evil formation on the three bones faded to the point where they had almost disappeared. At the same time, the 6 members of the Charteris family who were fighting Audrey's group far from them suddenly had their heads exploded. Their soul altars shattered. The blood bones inside the bodies flew out and headed to the desert. Oh! While Shi Yang was about to gather all the blood bones, his face changed. A divine light shot out from his eyes as he was gazing at the bone from Hassan. A beam of energy arose from the blood bone, which had triggered Shi Yang's blood vein ring and made it glow in the red light. Swoosh! The blood vein ring flew out of Shi Yang's finger and was placed on that blood bone, gathering some kind of remnant energy from the blood bone. The last piece of its memory. Shi Yang was shocked. His eyes brightened as he knew what was going on. Xian Shan's bone had the last part of the blood vein ring's memory. After it had fused with that part of memory, the ring spirit would be intact. While Shi Yang was sinking in his thrill, his face changed again. He found out that the 10 pieces of the blood bone he had collected flying out of the blood vein ring were gathering with the other pieces of bone here. All were releasing a marvelous corpse chi. They were moving around Hassan and entered his body. And the dead Hassan was now covered in the thick, pure corpse chi. Magically, Hassan's dried, bloody body was recovering rapidly. Hassan's flesh was growing. Slowly, a drawing emerged on his glabella. It's the blood mark. Chapter 1172, Hassan's Riddle. Chapter 1172, Hassan's Riddle, _ All 19 bones of Xian Shan were releasing the pure corpse chi and winding around Hassan. Hassan's skeletal body grew the flesh once again. His veins were connected and reviving him at a speed that naked eyes could observe. Gradually, the blood bones exploded and turned into a bone powder that got into Hassan's flesh, bones, and veins and became part of his. A mark slowly became visible in Hassan's glabella. Shi Yang was dumbstruck. The blood vein ring was also carving that mark on Hassan's forehead. The blood vein ring rolled around. Red beams flashed like a spotlight shining on Hassan's glabella that carved the mark of the cluster of blood clouds there. Hassan was dead. His god body was pale and dry like a weathered corpse, which looked scary indeed. As soon as the blood bones that came from Xian Shan exploded, it turned into powder and entered Hassan's god body. The blood mark emerged at his glabella. The corpse chi winding around Hassan made his soul altar fluctuate with strange energy when pieces of his scattered soul were wrapped by the blood mark. They all gathered one more time. Swoosh. When the blood cloud mark appeared on Hassan's forehead, the blood vein ring flew back to Shi Yang's hand. After a long moment of silence, it started to talk to Shi Yang. This young man has learned the essence of death many years ago from Xian Shan's bones. He's like Xian Shan's successor. Shi Yang was astounded. He stood baffled for a while before he could ask the ring spirit, "What's going on?" "My memory was divided into 3 parts. Laro Luo, Xian He, and Xian Shan kept them respectively. They would use the memory to search the successor of Bloodthirsty. Laro Luo came to Grace Mainland to use his supernatural power to bend nature's principles and bring you here and let you receive the main inheritance of the Bloodthirsty force. Xian He and Xian Shan also held a part of the memory to find the heir for our master. However, receiving the master's inheritance could take place only in an ancient continent. Xian He came to ancient demon continent but he failed. Xian Shan had the biggest guts. He came to the ancient god continent of the God Clan. He had broken the plan of the God Clan. Unfortunately, the Charteris family found him. Eventually, his soul and body perished. As the ring spirit's memory was gradually filled, the secret that had been hidden for years was slowly revealed. The blood vein ring was the life treasure of the Bloodthirstis master. That year when their master had fallen, Laro Luo, Xian He, and Xian Shan had divided the memory of the blood vein ring into 3 parts. They then began to seek the most suitable candidate to impart their master's power Upanishad. Laro Luo found Grace Mainland. Xian He came to ancient demon continent while arrogant Xian Shan plotted his plan in ancient god continent. Only Laro Luo succeeded. He had arranged the secret formation in Grace Mainland to bring Shi Yang, crossing the realms and falling into the blood pond to receive the inheritance. Xian He came to ancient demon continent. However, earth and heaven energy on this continent had already been diluted when he came. To create the formation to impart the inheritance of the Bloodthirstis master, it required a lot of external factors including stars, the universe, space, and more. At that time, the ancient demon continent wasn't suitable to do that. Eventually, Xian He had to give up and he left with a part of memory. Xian Shan was the bravest and yet haughtiest among the 3 of them. He directly went to the ancestral star of the God Clan, ancient god continent, planning on robbing the origin of the continent and choosing the successor for his master here. Then, they could take the root of the God Clan to revive the bloodthirsty force. Unfortunately, Xian Shan was exposed. The God Clan had chased after him. When he had been damaged, the Charteris family had exploded his entire body and burned down his soul altar. Xian Shan was an extreme expert of the bloodthirsty force. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been eligible to keep one part of Ring Spirit's memory. Before his soul altar was shattered, he had condensed and imprinted his whole life attainment of power Upanishad and God power into his bones. Although his soul and flesh were gone, his skeleton hadn't exploded. He was afraid that the secret of the ring spirit would be exposed. Thus, he had sealed the ring spirit's memory in the bone in his chest where he had carved the marvelous essence of his power Upanishad. The Charteris warriors wanted to kill Xian Shan utterly. However, no matter how hard they had tried with many experts joining this operation, they couldn't burn Xian Shan's skeleton into ashes. It scared and surprised the Charteris family a lot. Eventually, an excellent blacksmith of the Charteris family had come up with an idea. They would use Xian Shan's skeleton to force the divine weapon and carve the wicked, exclusive formation of their family. That way they could make Xian Shan's skeleton a sharp divine weapon in their family. His proposal was approved. They immediately gathered the team to collect the strange and precious materials from the big star areas to refine the skeleton and make it tougher and become unbreakable. The Charteris family had spent several hundred years to make Xian Shan's skeleton a new divine weapon. However, after they had completed this secret treasure, none of the Charteris warriors could control it. At this point, they thought that there were some mistakes during their forging process that made this weapon dysfunctional. The weapon made of Xian Shan's skeleton eventually became forgotten, and the skeleton lied under layers of dust in the vault of the family. Until Harson passed by the vault. When Harson was young, he wasn't really talented. In the Charteris family, he was just a normal warrior and a chicken one. The precursors of the family had often treated him like trash. When Harson had his grow-up ceremony, together with many other brothers and sisters, he was allowed to enter the family's vault to choose a secret treasure. Not one of this bunch of young men and women had laid their eyes on Xian Shan's skeleton, which was an ironic joke whenever people mentioned this weapon of the Charteris. Spiritless, timid Harson wasn't strong enough to compete for the other treasures with his brothers and sisters. Consequently, they had taken all the good treasures and left Harson a very little choice. Abandoning himself to despair, Harson knew that he couldn't be outstanding in his family, so he decided to take 19 blood bones. Afterward, the family arranged for him to enter the deathtrap training court of the God Clan to cultivate. He got to know Mia there. They became friends. At that time, Harson was still timid. Mia had to take care of him all the time. In that death trap, Harson had been lost for a while. The dangers there had almost killed him. Harson went unconscious. He didn't know that when he was unconscious, the ring spirit sealed in the key bone of Xian Shan's skeleton had woken up quietly. It then planted a seal in his soul and flesh and sent the everlasting will of Xian Shan, the extreme expert, into Harson's brain. After Harson woke up, he found that the 19 bones that used to be like trash were now part of his body. They became his most powerful divine weapons. From that day onward, wimpy Harson had changed earth-shakingly. In that death trap, Harson, the weakest warrior, had used his madness and brutality to rise, which made people clean their eyes to observe him once again. Eventually, he had surpassed Mia to become the winner of that deadly training. From that day onward, Harson seemed to have become another person. He had turned to be bloodthirsty, crazy, and extreme. Harson took the turn to take a savage revenge on anyone who used to insult him or mock him, whether they were his cousins or the outsiders. He became the new outstanding star of the God Clan. He even surpassed Haig. Finally, he became the seed warrior that the entire Charteris family had to care for and invest in. Until now, the elders of the God Clan only thought that Harson was forced to change when he was almost killed in that death trap. He had completely changed after that training course. No one knew that it was because the ring spirit had forcefully implanted the wild, strong will of Xian Shan into Harson's brain. It made the timidest kid of the Charteris family become the bold pride of the family. He was the brightest star that could compete with Haig of the God Clan. From that day onward, although Harson was a member of the God Clan, he was actually one of the bloodthirsty force's warriors. The ring spirit understood that it had to cover this secret. It didn't even talk to Harson and just hid in Harson's bones to check his development. It had never appeared or spoken to Harson. Harson's change was considered the most successful case of a weak one becoming strong in the God Clan. It had encouraged the God warriors though. Many young men and women of the God Clan had idolized Harson and had spread his legend. Xian He had finally finished it. That year, when they had divided the Blood Vein Ring's memory into 3 parts, only Lao Luo, Xian Shan, and Xian He knew this secret. The other chiefs could guess but they didn't know the details. Xian He knew that his blood younger brother was killed on ancient God continent. He knew that the Charteris family had killed him and he also knew that his bones had become the dangerous weapon that the Charteris family had spent hundreds of years to refine. After that, he guessed that the part of the memory that his brother had kept were hidden in his skeleton. Since the Charteris family couldn't break his bones after his body and soul had perished, it had to have some meaning here. Many chiefs of the other branches of the bloodthirsty force didn't know the secret hiding in Xian Shan's bones. Only Xian He, who also kept a part of the memory, knew their appointment, and he could somehow guess it precisely. Many years later, Hassan's story of a wimpy kid who became the most shining star of the God clan had spread wide. His bloodthirsty, mad, savage characteristics were admired by the Charteris warriors. Although the Charteris family had covered the fact that Hassan kept Xian Shan's bones, when Xian He heard about this and connected it to the image of the timid Hassan, he understood it almost immediately. The insane, bloodthirsty, savage, and manic features of Hassan's new personality was a version of Xian Shan's personality, his brother. As the blood older brother of Xian Shan, of course, Xian He knew what sort of man his brother was. If he didn't mind Hassan's God clan's origin, he was the exact copy of Xian Shan, his brother. In Xian He's heart, the death of his brother was what he had regretted the most in his life. Later on, Xian He had considered Hassan's change as his brother's resurrection. However, the only thing that had weighed Xian He's heart was that Hassan thought that he was a member of the Charteris and that he had to consider the God clan's welfare the most important thing. After Shi Yang had appeared, Xian He knew that Laro Luo had successfully done what he and his brother couldn't. Using his own channel to return the ring spirit's memory he had kept to Shi Yang, he then contacted Chief Frederick, the one who cultivated corpse power of the bloodthirsty force, to arrange for Shi Yang to enter Desolate. Because Xian He knew that Hassan had the third part of the ring spirit in his bone and the blood bones of Hassan had the energy fluctuation of Xian Shan's power Upanishad, he knew that Shi Yang and Hassan would fight. As Shi Yang had the bloody sword and shield of the master of the bloodthirsty force together with his devouring power Upanishad, when he used the blood sword or the shield, he could subdue Hassan's power Upanishad. After that, he could defeat the man easily to collect the last part of the ring spirit's memory, which had trained Hassan. Only the blood vein ring could carve the crest of the bloodthirsty force for Hassan. Everything had developed as he had planned. Xian He's plan had not even a tiny flaw. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.